In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in.
The first night my children slept in our car, I told them we were camping. My son smiled immediately. My daughter pulled her blanket tighter across her chest and looked out the window without saying anything. My husband sat behind the steering wheel, pretending to check traffic that did not exist. Then my 6-year-old looked at me and asked a question that nearly destroyed me. "Mommy," his small voice barely rose above a whisper. Are poor people still allowed to have adventures? Before I tell you how we lost our home while trying to protect our children from the truth, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is where you're right now. Morning. Afternoon. Late at night, I always love seeing who's sitting quietly on the other side of these stories. Some stories fade with time, but this one stayed with me for a long while, maybe because I know what it feels like when life starts falling apart quietly. So quietly that nobody notices at first. 3 months earlier, our life looked ordinary. Not perfect, just ordinary, and ordinary can feel invisible while you are living inside it. You do not wake up grateful for kitchen cabinets. You do not stare lovingly at laundry baskets. You do not stand in your apartment thinking, "One day I will miss this ceiling. One day I will miss this couch. One day I will miss hearing my children running through this hallway." Because people rarely appreciate ordinary things until life removes them quietly. Our apartment was small. 2 bedrooms. 3rd floor, old carpet, kitchen cabinets that never closed properly. Marcus kept saying he would fix them one weekend, then another weekend, then another. I used to laugh every time. Those cabinets are going to outlive us. Marcus would grin without looking up from whatever tool he was holding. Nah, I have a plan. He always had plans. Marcus believed things could be fixed. Broken sink, fix it. Bad week, fix it. Flat tire, fix it. Marcus carried confidence the way some people carry keys, like it belonged to him naturally. Then life handed him something he could not repair. It started with one meeting. One ordinary Tuesday, I remember because I had texted him that morning. Do not forget milk. That was the message. Nothing dramatic, nothing important. At 11:42 he called. I almost ignored it because I was folding laundry. Then I answered. Hey. He remained silent, not too long, just long enough to make my stomach tighten. Then Marcus finally spoke. Naomi, something inside me immediately shifted. 20 years together teaches you voice changes. Tiny changes, invisible changes. Marcus did not sound loud. He did not sound panicked. He sounded hollow. I straightened slowly beside the couch. Marcus? I could hear him breathing. Then finally, I lost my job. Everything inside me stopped. Not movie silence. Not dramatic silence. Just my hand frozen above a pile of folded towels while my brain tried to understand words that suddenly did not belong together. Marcus. Lost job. No, those words felt wrong beside each other. Marcus worked constantly, skipped lunches, picked up extra shifts, trained new employees, worked weekends without complaint. Marcus was dependable, and somewhere along the way, I had convinced myself dependable people were protected from disaster. I know better now. Life does not separate hard-working people from hardship. Sometimes storms choose houses randomly. Sometimes good people get hit too. I sat down slowly on the edge of the couch. What happened? Marcus exhaled softly into the phone. Budget cuts. I closed my eyes. They let 12 people go. I stared at the wall across from me without actually seeing it, because fear had just walked quietly into the room and made itself comfortable beside me, and from that moment on, it seemed to follow us everywhere. For the next 2 hours, I cleaned things that did not need cleaning. I wiped counters that were already clean, folded towels that were already folded, straightened pillows, then straightened them again, because panic needs somewhere to go. Sometimes, panic becomes tears. Sometimes, panic becomes silence. Sometimes panic becomes a woman reorganizing kitchen cabinets because she cannot reorganize reality. At 4:32, I heard Marcus's keys outside the apartment door. Normally, he came home loudly. Usually the door opened before his voice did. Who missed me? Jaden would already be running toward him. Lila would glance up from her books with that quiet smile she never realized she was wearing. Back then, Marcus carried life into the apartment with him. Not that day. The door opened quietly. Marcus stepped inside, slowly, still wearing his work badge. And immediately I knew. I knew before he spoke. I knew before he looked at me. Marcus always removed his badge before walking into the apartment. Always. Because Jaden used to steal it and pretend he worked construction too. Marcus looked at me from across the room. I looked back at him. Neither of us moved. Then Lila appeared in the hallway holding a book against her chest. "Dad," she smiled automatically. Then slowed down. Children notice things. Always. Marcus forced a smile onto his face. "Hey, Peanut," she hugged him anyway. A second later, Jaden came sprinting out of the living room. "Dad!" Marcus lifted him automatically, smiled automatically, kissed the top of his head automatically. Funny how parents continue loving on instinct even while their world is collapsing quietly behind their eyes. I watched Marcus carefully. To anybody else he probably looked normal, almost normal, but 20 years teaches you where people hide pain. Marcus hid his around his eyes, tiny changes, tiny exhaustion, tiny sadness, invisible things. Unless you love someone, then nothing is invisible. Dinner felt strange that night, not strange enough for the children. Jaden still dropped macaroni onto the floor. Lila still corrected his math homework while eating. The television still hummed softly in the background. Life still looked ordinary, but Marcus barely touched his food. I noticed immediately, and a few seconds later he noticed me noticing. Then he smiled. Small smile, practice smile. Not real. There is a difference. Real smiles reach the eyes. Practice smiles stop halfway there. After dinner, Jaden disappeared into the living room with toy dinosaurs. Lila curled up on the couch with another book. Marcus stood at the sink pretending to wash dishes. Pretending, because the water had been running for nearly a minute, and he had not moved a single plate. I walked over quietly and touched his arm. Marcus stared into the sink without looking at me, then, so softly I almost missed it. "I am scared." I looked at him immediately. Marcus almost never admitted fear. Not because he was arrogant, because somewhere along the way men learned strange rules. Nobody says out loud, "Be strong." Do not shake. Fix everything. Carry everything. And if you break, break privately. I leaned against the counter beside him. We have savings. Silence. We have time. Marcus exhaled slowly but never looked up. I swallowed and lowered my voice. We will figure this out. Marcus nodded once, but he did not look convinced. Because hope sounds different after disaster arrives. Hope before disaster says everything will be okay. Hope after disaster whispers, please let everything be okay. Those are not the same thing. Pain does not usually knock on doors. It lets itself in quietly. First, it changes routines. Then, sleep. Then, conversations. Then one day people look at each other across dinner tables and realize fear has been eating beside them for weeks. And the cruel thing about fear is this. It almost always arrives long before the actual disaster does. Marcus finally looked at me. His eyes looked tired already. What if I cannot fix this? For the first time since the phone call, I felt fear look directly at me too. The first week after Marcus lost his job felt strangely normal, too normal, that should have worried me. Because disasters rarely arrive all at once, they arrive in pieces. Little pieces, quiet pieces, small enough to explain away. At first, nothing changed. Marcus updated his resume, made phone calls, scheduled interviews, pressed his shirts every morning, then kissed me before leaving. Wish me luck, I smiled every time. Always. Then I would stand near the living room window and watch him walk toward the car. And every morning after he drove away, I whispered the same thing under my breath. Please! Just that one word, because sometimes prayer becomes so heavy that words become smaller. Days passed. Then another week passed. Then another. The first bill notice appeared on a Thursday. I remember because I was putting groceries away. Not many groceries. Just enough: milk, bread, eggs, peanut butter. Things suddenly looked different after Marcus lost work. I started looking at prices, really looking at them. I used to grab things without thinking. Now I calculated things, compared things, put things back. Funny how quickly survival teaches math. I opened the envelope absent-mindedly. Electric notice past due. My stomach tightened immediately. I folded the paper quickly and slid it beneath a pile of junk mail before Marcus got home. Not because hiding it solved anything, because sometimes when people cannot solve pain, they hide it. Marcus walked inside 20 minutes later carrying a folder under one arm. I smiled automatically, the kind I had been wearing a lot lately. "How did it go?" he hesitated. "Very slightly," then answered too quickly. "Good, too short, too rehearsed." I knew immediately bad interview again. I nodded anyway, because marriage sometimes becomes two people protecting each other with lies. Small lies, gentle lies, loving lies. Marcus kissed my forehead, then glanced toward the living room. "Where are the kids?" "Lila's reading." "And Jaden?" I laughed softly. "Building blanket forts." Marcus smiled for real this time. "Blanket forts?" I nodded. "He says it's a castle." Marcus walked into the living room with exaggerated seriousness. Jaden looked up immediately from inside a mess of pillows and blankets. "Dad." Marcus crouched beside the fort. "What is this exactly?" Jaden spread both arms dramatically. "My kingdom." Marcus leaned closer, inspecting it carefully. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "This kingdom seems suspiciously underfunded," Jaden gasped in horror. Lila laughed out loud. Actual laughter, small, but real. And for a few seconds, everything felt normal again. Fear loosened its grip on us, and I remembered what breathing without panic felt like. Then I looked over at Lila. She was smiling, but she was not watching the blanket fort. She was watching Marcus, studying him. Children memorize faces. Children memorize energy. Children notice when laughter sounds different. And for the first time, I wondered if our daughter had started noticing the cracks too. There is something cruel about falling apart slowly. Sudden disasters hurt, but slow disasters whisper. Slow disasters let people wake up every morning believing life might still return to normal. Then one day, they realize normal quietly left weeks ago, and nobody noticed when it happened. The strange thing about financial trouble is that it does not always begin with losing things. Sometimes, it begins with things disappearing quietly. So quietly children almost do not notice. Almost. First it was small things. Takeout stopped. Friday pizza nights disappeared. Movie snacks became homemade popcorn. Then juice boxes slowly became a luxury. Then brand name cereal disappeared. Then little things around the apartment started leaving too. The air fryer. Marcus's extra tools. The old gaming system, small things. Reasonable things. Temporary things. At least that was what we kept telling ourselves. I noticed it one Saturday afternoon. Jaden stood in the kitchen opening cabinets, then closing them, opening another, closing another. I looked up from the sink. "What are you looking for, baby?" He frowned slightly. "The dinosaur cereal." Silence. I forced a smile. "We bought different cereal this week." He looked at the plain box sitting on the counter, then back at me. "But dinosaurs are my favorite." I laughed softly, even though my chest hurt. "I know." He stood there. Another second. Then nodded slowly. Children accept answers more easily than adults. But children also remember patterns. He poured cereal quietly and walked toward the living room carrying his bowl with both hands. Something about the way he walked made my chest tighten, because I realized I had started feeling grateful when my 6-year-old became easy, flexible, understanding. But 6-year-olds should complain about cereal. 6-year-olds should argue over cartoons. 6-year-olds should not quietly accept less. An hour later, Marcus walked inside carrying grocery bags. Too many grocery bags. Way too many. I looked from the bags to his face, then back to the bags again. Fear tightened immediately, because I already knew. Marcus saw my expression and smiled too quickly. "Relax," he laughed lightly. I found good deals, coupons. That was the next thing he said. Coupons. Marcus never used coupons. Never. I waited until the children disappeared into the living room. Then followed him quietly into the kitchen. I lowered my voice. Marcus. He kept unloading groceries, avoiding eye contact immediately. Marcus. Still nothing. I folded my arms. Tell me. Silence stretched between us. Then finally he stopped moving. I sold my watch. Everything inside me dropped. I stared at him. Not because of the watch itself, because of what it represented. Marcus bought that watch after his first major promotion. I still remembered the day he brought it home. He had walked into the apartment grinning like a little boy, and held up the box proudly. Do you know what this means? I laughed at him. You bought an expensive watch? He kissed my forehead and smiled. No. Then he whispered. It means we're okay. I remembered believing him. Now, the watch was gone. Just gone, Marcus shrugged too casually. We needed groceries. I looked down immediately because tears were already pushing into my eyes again. Lately, tears felt like unwanted roommates, always showing up, always arriving uninvited. Marcus touched my shoulder gently. Naomi. I shook my head. No. He frowned slightly. No what? I finally looked up at him. You do not keep selling pieces of yourself. Silence. His expression changed immediately because he understood exactly what I meant. The watch had never been about time. The tools had never been about tools. The things disappearing from our apartment were becoming symbols, proof that our life was slowly slipping away one piece at a time. Marcus looked down at the grocery bags, then whispered, I don't know what else to do, and suddenly, I did not know either. That night, Jaden built another blanket fort. This one somehow included 3 dining room chairs, half the couch cushions, 2 pillows, and a flashlight. Approximately half our living room disappeared beneath blankets. Lila sat inside, pretending to read. Marcus squeezed himself awkwardly into one corner of the fort and looked around dramatically. I believe this structure violates several safety regulations, Jaden gasped. No! Marcus nodded seriously. I may have to shut the entire thing down! Jaden screamed and tackled him immediately. Lila laughed. Marcus laughed. Then I laughed too. Actual laughter. For a few seconds, everything sounded normal. For a few seconds, overdue notices sitting inside drawers disappeared. For a few seconds, fear loosened its grip around my chest. And maybe that is what makes difficult seasons confusing. Joy still visits sometimes. Tiny moments, tiny reminders of what people are fighting to protect. I looked around at them quietly, Marcus laughing beneath blankets, Jaden climbing across his back, Lila hiding her smile behind a book she was no longer reading. And silently I thought, please, please let me keep this. Because sometimes people are not asking life for everything. Sometimes they are only asking, please do not take one more thing. Loss does not always arrive carrying boxes. Sometimes it leaves carrying them. One chair, one watch, one routine, one dream, one small piece at a time. And the dangerous part is this. People rarely notice they are drowning when the water rises slowly. Mothers become magicians when life gets difficult. Not real magicians. The quiet kind, the kind who make things disappear. Fear, stress, food, their own needs. I started skipping meals on a Tuesday, not because I planned to, not because I made some dramatic sacrifice. It happened quietly, the way most sacrifices happen. I made breakfast for everyone. Eggs, toast, fruit. Jaden wanted extra toast. Marcus wanted coffee. Lila barely touched her food because she always read while eating. Ordinary morning. Normal morning. Then when I finally sat down, I suddenly wasn't hungry. At least that was the lie I used. Jaden looked up immediately. You are not eating. I smiled softly. I ate while cooking. Lie. Tiny lie, small lie. Loving lie. Jaden accepted it immediately and went back to eating. Marcus looked at me across the table, just looked long enough. Then lowered his eyes again. He knew. Of course he knew. 20 years together teaches people dangerous things. Dangerous things like recognizing pain before words arrive. But he said nothing, because people who love each other sometimes become experts at protecting each other's pride. 3 days later, I did it again. Then again. Then again, I pushed food around my plate, took tiny bites, drank water, smiled, pretended. Funny how pretending becomes exhausting, not physically. Emotionally, it feels like carrying invisible bags nobody else can see. That Friday I stood in the kitchen making grilled cheese sandwiches, while Jaden colored superheroes at the table. Lila sat beside him reading. Marcus was in the bedroom filling out job applications again. Always again. I placed plates down. Jaden smiled immediately. Yes. He loved grilled cheese. Lila glanced up and smiled softly too. Then both of them noticed the same thing. I sat down without a plate. Jaden frowned. Mom, yeah? Where is yours? I smiled automatically. Practice smile again. I am not hungry. Silence. Jaden nodded slowly. But Lila looked at me differently. Not at my face, at my hands. Then at the empty space in front of me. Then back at my face again. Watching, studying. Children ask questions with their mouths sometimes, but first, they ask with their eyes. Marcus walked into the kitchen just then. He stopped near the table and took in the scene with one glance. Jaden coloring. Lila watching me carefully over the top of her book. The empty space in front of me. Marcus said nothing at first. He simply crossed the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and pulled down another plate. Then he quietly cut his sandwich in half, slid one piece toward me, and sat beside the children with the other half. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Love says many things without words. I stared down at the sandwich while heat climbed into my face. Marcus picked up his own food casually, pretending not to notice the tears already gathering in my eyes. Then, without lifting his gaze, he said softly, "You forgot something." I swallowed hard. What? He finally glanced at me. You forgot yourself? The words hit harder than they should have, because somewhere between overdue notices, shrinking groceries, and trying to keep the children smiling, I had slowly disappeared inside survival. Across the table, Lila lowered her eyes. Jaden looked between us, confused for a moment, before returning to his coloring. Children understand pieces first. The full picture comes later. I picked up half the sandwich slowly. Then I noticed something else. Marcus looked thinner too. His cheeks slightly hollowed, his belt tighter than usual, the exhaustion around his eyes deeper than before. A cold feeling settled in my chest because I suddenly realized something terrifying. I was not the only one pretending not to be hungry. The kitchen grew still. Not tense, not angry, just heavy. The kind of silence that arrives when everyone reaches the same painful truth at once. Marcus took another bite and forced a small smile. Eat. I let out a shaky laugh and finally did. Across from us, Lila kept watching both of us quietly. Not suspicious anymore. Aware. That frightened me more. Because children do not understand bills or unemployment. But they understand absence. They notice shrinking dinners, tired laughter, forced smiles, the way adults begin answering questions too quickly. Adults think children miss details. The truth is, children often sense the heart of a problem long before adults admit it aloud. 3 days later, the eviction notice arrived, and that was the day our lives stopped pretending alongside us. People imagine disasters arriving loudly. Sirens, arguments, phone calls in the middle of the night. But some disasters arrive inside plain white envelopes. No warning. No dramatic music. Just paper. Thin paper carrying enough weight to crush a family. I found the notice halfway beneath our apartment door while carrying grocery bags inside. Jaden was behind me arguing passionately about whether dinosaurs could defeat superheroes. Ordinary conversation. ordinary afternoon. I almost ignored the envelope completely. Then I noticed the apartment complex logo printed across the corner. My stomach tightened instantly. Fear recognizes certain things before the mind catches up. I unlocked the door slowly and stepped inside. Lila disappeared toward her room with her backpack. Jaden dropped onto the carpet near the television. Life kept moving around me while I stood frozen in the kitchen holding that envelope. For several seconds, I simply stared at it, not opening it, because sometimes unopened pain feels survivable. Once opened, it becomes real. Marcus was in the bedroom, typing on his laptop again. Applications, emails, follow-ups. I could hear the faint tapping of keys from down the hallway. I finally opened the envelope, and the entire kitchen changed. Past due balance. Immediate action required. Eviction proceedings. 30 days. I read the line once. Then again, 30 days. My knees weakened so suddenly, I had to lower myself into a chair. 30 days. Funny how people reread painful words as if reality might suddenly correct itself. As if the page might say, "Never mind, we made a mistake." Marcus walked out of the bedroom carrying his laptop. He was smiling when he entered the kitchen. An actual smile, real. Then he saw my face. Everything changed immediately. Know me? I could not answer. I just handed him the paper. Marcus read silently, and I watched something inside him collapse inch by inch. I hate quiet heartbreak. Loud pain feels easier somehow. Loud pain announces itself. Quiet pain moves across someone's face, while you stand there unable to stop it. Marcus finished reading, lowered the paper, then sat beside me without speaking. Minutes passed.
Real minutes.
Finally, he whispered, "I am sorry." I closed my eyes immediately. No, not that sentence again. Not Marcus apologizing for storms he did not create. I turned toward him sharply. No, he stared down at the table. I failed. No stronger now, he finally looked up. Tears were already filling my eyes. You stop saying that. Marcus looked away again, jaw tightening. Pain had started teaching him dangerous lies. Shame never arrives screaming. It whispers. It sits beside good people and slowly changes the way they see themselves. Then one day, a father looks into the mirror and sees failure, while everyone else still sees a man carrying his family on exhausted shoulders. We did not tell the children immediately. Maybe that was wrong. Maybe it was not. I still do not know. Parents make decisions while frightened, and frightened decisions rarely come with instructions. That night, I woke around 2 a.m. and found Marcus sitting alone at the kitchen table. Bills covered the surface around him. Numbers, statements, past due notices. His laptop screen glowed faintly in the dark apartment. I stood in the hallway watching him for a moment, watching the man I loved trying to calculate miracles. He looked beyond tired, smaller somehow, as if stress had slowly been sanding pieces off him. I walked over quietly and rested a hand against his shoulder. Marcus looked up. His eyes were red from exhaustion. I sat beside him. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then he whispered, "What if we can't fix this?" The words hung between us. Heavy, fragile. What if 30 days becomes... His voice trailed off. He did not need to finish. We both understood the rest. 30 days. Then nowhere. 30 days. Then uncertainty. 30 days until fear stopped hiding behind the walls and stepped fully into our lives. I leaned my head gently against his shoulder, and for a long time, we sat there together in silence. No solutions, no speeches, just 2 exhausted people holding on to each other while life shifted underneath them. Because sometimes love does not repair the damage. Sometimes love simply stays. The next afternoon, Jaden burst into the kitchen wearing a towel tied around his shoulders, like a cape. "Dad." Marcus looked up from the laptop, balanced on the table. Jaden raised both arms proudly. "I am Super Jaden!" Marcus blinked seriously. "Oh no!" Jaden pointed dramatically toward the living room. "I save families." Marcus leaned back in his chair as if deeply concerned. Can Super Jaden help with dishes? Jaden gasped in betrayal. No, Lila laughed from the couch without lifting her eyes from her book. Marcus stood anyway and chased Jaden around the apartment while the little boy screamed with laughter. For a few minutes, fear stayed outside the room. For a few minutes, life loosened its grip on us. But fear always comes back eventually, and ours was already counting down. 27 days, then 24, then 21. The numbers stopped feeling like time. They started feeling like water dripping steadily from a leaking ceiling, slow, constant, impossible to ignore. Every morning I woke already calculating things in my head. Days left. Money left. Gas left. Food left. Fear turns people into mathematicians. Marcus kept trying every single day. Applications, interviews, phone calls, emails, follow-ups. I watched him shave carefully every morning before interviews, press shirts that no longer fit quite right, straighten ties and mirrors, while exhaustion sat behind his eyes. Then, every evening he came back, carrying another disappointment home with him. The hardest part was this. Marcus never complained, not once. He still played with Jaden, still helped Lila with homework, still kissed me before bed, still tried to sound hopeful even when hope barely existed anymore. But pain had started leaving fingerprints on him. His shoulders rested lower now. His smile arrived slower. His laughter carried strain underneath it. One afternoon, I opened our closet and froze. Marcus's leather jacket was gone. I stared at the empty hanger for several seconds before turning slowly toward the living room. That jacket had been his favorite for years. I bought it for our anniversary. I still remembered him putting it on for the first time and grinning at himself in the mirror. I look expensive now. I found Marcus sitting at the table staring at his laptop screen typing. Stopping. Typing again. I stood in the doorway holding the empty hanger. Marcus looked up once, then immediately looked away. He already knew. Silence stretched across the room. Finally he said, quietly, "We needed gas money." I sat beside him slowly. No anger, no blame, only sadness settling heavily into my chest. Because we were no longer selling possessions. We were selling memories, milestones, pieces of the life we built together. One piece at a time, I placed the hanger carefully on the table. Marcus. He kept staring ahead. Look at me. Nothing. Marcus! He finally turned toward me, and for a second I saw it clearly. Fear. Real fear, the kind people hide because speaking it aloud makes it feel permanent. His throat moved as he swallowed hard. What if I can't save us? Tears filled my eyes instantly. Not because he asked the question, because I realized he had probably been carrying it alone for weeks. Questions become dangerous when people carry them privately. I reached for his hand across the table. You are not carrying this by yourself. You hear me? His eyes dropped again. Because sometimes pain hears words, but translates them differently. There is a special cruelty in watching someone you love blame themselves for surviving a storm. Storms do not stop outside good homes and politely choose someone else. Life does not separate effort from suffering. Sometimes good people simply get caught in terrible weather. 3 days later, I started putting things into boxes. Not officially. At least that is what I told myself. I called it organizing, cleaning, making space, anything except the truth. Packing. I folded winter clothes into bins, sorted old toys, stacked books into neat piles, moved kitchen supplies into cardboard boxes. Pretending again. Everything in our lives had become pretending. I stood in Lila's room holding a stack of picture frames against my chest. Baby photos, school photos, birthday photos, proof that ordinary life once lived here. I smiled softly at one picture of Lila missing her front teeth, while Marcus held a birthday cake beside her. Jaden's face was covered in frosting. Everybody laughing. Everybody safe. Life before fear moved into our home. Mom. I jumped slightly. Lila stood in the doorway watching me carefully, always watching. What are you doing? I smiled too quickly. Cleaning. Her eyes moved slowly across the boxes, lining the wall. Then back to me. She stepped farther into the room and picked up one of the frames. I like this picture. Me too, I said. She stared down at it for several seconds before speaking again. Why are we cleaning so much lately? My chest tightened instantly. Children notice patterns before adults realize they exist. I looked away briefly, just 1 second, then forced another smile. We're getting organized. Lila nodded, slowly, but she kept studying my face, not fully believing me anymore, and suddenly, a frightening thought slipped quietly into my stomach. Lila had stopped accepting answers. Now she was studying them. That night, Jaden dragged blankets into the living room again. Dad. Marcus looked over from the couch. We have a fort emergency. Marcus sat up immediately. A fort emergency! Jaden nodded with complete seriousness. Very serious. Marcus looked toward me, then back at Jaden. Well, he stood dramatically. We cannot ignore national emergencies. Jaden screamed and sprinted toward the living room. Marcus chased after him while Lila followed behind, smiling quietly. I stayed in the kitchen a moment longer listening to their laughter echo through the apartment. And for a little while, I pretended with them too. Because pretending was the only thing keeping us standing. 7 days. I hated that number. Not because 7 itself meant anything. Because 7 had become a countdown. 7 days left in our apartment. 7 days before uncertainty swallowed us completely. 7 days before we ran out of places to hide the truth. Fear changes numbers. Birthdays become expenses. Weekends become deadlines. Days become enemies. That morning, I stood in the kitchen staring at the calendar hanging near the refrigerator. Marcus had written interview dates in blue ink. Lila's school reminders in black, Jaden's soccer practices in green, ordinary family colors, normal life colors. But all I could see was 7. Marcus walked into the kitchen wearing sweatpants and exhaustion. He wrapped his arms around me from behind and rested his chin against my shoulder. Neither of us spoke. We had started doing that often lately, standing together silently, like two people leaning against the same cracked wall. Then Marcus whispered, I have another interview today. I turned quickly. Really? He nodded once. Construction supply company? His voice carried cautious hope. Operations manager? Not ideal. Not close to his old salary, but Hope becomes less picky after suffering a while. Eventually Hope starts saying, anything. Please, I smiled genuinely this time. When? 1 o'clock? I hugged him tightly without thinking. I have a good feeling, Marcus laughed softly against my shoulder. I like when you lie to me. I pulled back and frowned. Excuse me, he smiled faintly. I am joking. A small smile touched his face. Mostly. I hit his arm lightly, and for one brief second, I saw the old Marcus again. The version of him from before fear took up permanent residence in our lives. Then his phone buzzed. Reality stepped right back into the room. Marcus looked down at the screen. I watched hope arrive in his eyes, then disappear just as quickly. His face emptied. He stared at the phone for several seconds before lowering himself slowly into a chair. What happened? Without speaking, he handed me the phone. Position filled. Thank you for your interest. 3 small words. That was all it took. Marcus leaned forward and covered his face with both hands. Then he whispered something so softly I barely heard it. I can't do this anymore. And hearing that frightened me more than the eviction notice ever had, because anger still fights. Exhaustion simply tries to survive. But emptiness stops moving. I sat beside Marcus slowly and reached for his hand. He held mine automatically. Instinct, muscle memory, love surviving even while everything else shook around us. But he still stared at the floor, still carrying the weight alone. Pain becomes dangerous when people isolate themselves inside it. Pain likes closed doors, dark rooms, silence. Pain whispers terrible things to exhausted people. Do not tell anyone. You are becoming a burden. handle it yourself. And the cruel part is good people believe those lies fastest. That night, the children fell asleep early. Jaden passed out halfway through a cartoon with one sock missing and popcorn scattered across his shirt. Lila carried a book into bed but barely turned any pages. Marcus sat at the kitchen table again, surrounded by bills and job listings. The apartment had grown quieter lately. Not peaceful quiet. Heavy quiet. The kind that settles over people carrying too much. Around midnight, I walked into the kitchen for water and found Marcus staring at nothing. The laptop screen still glowed in front of him, untouched. He looked exhausted in a way sleep could not fix. Not physically, spiritually. Like someone standing at the edge of something invisible. I sat beside him without speaking. For a while, we listened to the hum of the refrigerator and traffic drifting faintly through the window. Then Marcus finally whispered, "What if we lose everything?" I looked at him carefully, then down at the stack of overdue notices spread across the table. We already said everything would be okay. Marcus let out a short laugh. Not happy laughter, the kind people make when they are too tired to hide heartbreak anymore. What if we lied? The question settled heavily between us. I wanted to answer immediately, wanted to tell him everything would work out. Wanted to promise him this story would end gently. But fear had moved into me too by then, so instead I squeezed his hand and told the truth. "I don't know." Marcus looked at me then. Actually looked at me, because honesty sounds different. "I don't know what happens next," I whispered. Then I tightened my fingers around his. "But I know this." He waited quietly. "We are not leaving each other." His eyes filled immediately. Mine did too. Marcus leaned forward and wrapped his arms around me, and for a long moment we simply held onto each other inside that tiny kitchen while fear sat quietly beside us. Neither of us realized someone else was awake. Neither of us noticed the small figure standing silently near the hallway entrance. Lila, listening, watching, collecting another piece, another answer. Another truth, and eventually, enough pieces become impossible to ignore. I used to think losing a home would feel dramatic. I imagined shouting, crying, maybe some terrible final moment where life officially announced itself broken. Instead, the day we left our apartment felt strangely ordinary, that somehow hurt worse. The sun still came up, coffee still brewed, birds still landed outside the kitchen window, Jaden still argued with cartoons. Lila still brushed her hair while reading. Ordinary things kept happening while our world quietly ended. I remember standing in the kitchen staring around the apartment thinking, how can everything look so normal when my life is falling apart? That is the strange thing about heartbreak. Your world stops moving. Everyone else's continues. Marcus had already been awake for hours carrying boxes to the car. Not many. Only the things we absolutely needed. Blankets, clothes, documents, children's belongings. Funny how quickly life teaches people what matters. Years of living reduced to what fits inside a vehicle. I stood in the living room slowly turning in circles. The couch. The television. Lila's books stacked beside the armrest. Jaden's toys near the corner. Years of ordinary life lived quietly inside those walls. Birthdays, movie nights, homework at the kitchen table, sick days, Christmas mornings. And suddenly, I wanted more time, just one more normal dinner, one more ordinary Tuesday, one more evening hearing my children run through the hallway, because ordinary things become beautiful the moment they begin disappearing. I heard footsteps behind me. Lila. She stood quietly beside me, following my gaze around the apartment. Then she asked softly, "Are we moving?" My heart clenched. Not physically, emotionally. I turned toward her and forced another smile, the exhausting kind. "We're going on a little adventure." Lila looked around the apartment again, then back at me, and for one long second, I thought she was going to ask something harder, something I could not survive answering yet. Instead, she nodded slowly, too quietly, then walked away, and something inside me whispered again, "She knows more than she's saying." Marcus came back inside carrying another box. We looked at each other across the nearly empty room. Neither of us spoke. We no longer needed words for fear. By afternoon, almost everything was gone. The apartment looked bigger. Empty sadness creates space that way. I walked slowly through each room, touching walls and door frames, as if memory could somehow stay attached to my fingertips. Kitchen, living room, children's room, our bedroom. I stood inside the bedroom doorway and suddenly remembered Marcus carrying me across it years earlier while laughing. Welcome home. I closed my eyes immediately because tears rushed up too fast. Lately, tears waded close to the surface all the time. Mom! Jaden's voice pulled me back. I wiped my face quickly before turning around. Jaden stood near the car, vibrating with excitement. Dad said we're going somewhere. Marcus stood beside him, forcing another careful smile. Yeah, buddy. Jaden threw both hands into the air. Road trip. Marcus glanced at me briefly before answering. Something like that! Jaden shouted excitedly and climbed into the car. Lila got in quietly beside him, still observant, still collecting answers. Marcus closed the trunk slowly, then turned back toward the apartment building and stood there for a moment. A long moment. I watched his jaw tighten, watched him swallow hard. Then he whispered, I am sorry. I walked over immediately and took his hand. No, his eyes met mine. No more apologizing. Silence passed between us. You hear me? His eyes glistened. I squeezed his hand tighter. We leave together. He exhaled slowly. We survive together. And we come back together. Neither of us spoke after that. Marcus nodded once. Small, fragile. Hope had become fragile lately. There are moments in life when people think they are losing everything. But sometimes, everything was never furniture, never walls, never an address. Life strips people down to what matters most. And eventually, it forces people to discover what they cannot live without. Marcus started the engine. I looked back one last time at the third-floor apartment. Apartment 304, broken cabinet doors. Tiny kitchen. Ordinary life home. Then the building disappeared slowly behind us, and I did not know it yet, but the hardest night of our lives had only just begun. The first night we slept inside the car, I told my children we were camping, and somehow I smiled while saying it, because mothers become magicians when life falls apart. They make fear disappear. Even if only for their children, too much smiling had become dangerous lately. Usually it meant I was trying not to cry. Jaden's eyes widened the second I said the word camping. Camping. Not fear, not confusion, excitement. The kind only children can still afford. He twisted around in the back seat, looking at the blankets and snack bags stuffed around the car like we had built some exciting little fort on wheels. Inside the car, Marcus forced warmth into his voice from the driver's seat. We're trying something different. Jaden looked genuinely impressed. We invented car camping. Marcus laughed softly. Exactly. Jaden threw both hands into the air. We're geniuses. Lila smiled too. Small smile, quiet smile. But not surprised. I noticed immediately. Again. I kept noticing. Marcus drove slowly through town while streetlights slid across the windshield. Restaurants, gas stations, families heading home, people carrying groceries into places they would sleep safely tonight. I sat staring out the passenger window, thinking about how strange suffering feels in public, because pain isolates people. You can sit surrounded by thousands of strangers and still feel completely alone. Eventually, Marcus pulled into the corner of a grocery store parking lot beneath harsh white lights. Cars moved in and out steadily. Shopping carts rattled across pavement. People laughed somewhere nearby. Ordinary life continued around us while ours sat parked at the edge of it. Marcus turned off the engine. The silence afterward felt immediate and heavy. Jaden looked around curiously. So, This is the campsite. Marcus hesitated for only a second. Modern camping. Jaden accepted the explanation instantly. That is the beautiful thing about children. Adults need evidence. Children only need confidence. Lila stayed quiet beside him, watching both of us carefully, always paying attention. I reached into one of the grocery bags and pulled out juice boxes and crackers. Things we should not have spent money on. Things we technically could not afford anymore. But I needed something that still looked normal. Something that still felt like childhood. Jaden smiled the second I handed him snacks. Best camping ever. Marcus looked quickly toward the windshield. Very quickly. I knew exactly why, because I was doing the same thing. Trying not to let tears show, I leaned my head back against the seat and stared toward the parking lot lights. They blurred slightly, because the tears came anyway. Pretending had become exhausting. Fear had become exhausting. Everything felt exhausting. Marcus lowered his voice. So I looked toward him. He kept his eyes forward. How are you holding up? Funny question. People ask that, even when everybody already knows the answer. I let out a tired laugh and rubbed my forehead. I honestly don't know anymore. Marcus nodded once and reached across the console for my hand. No speeches, no solutions, just his fingers wrapping around mine. Sometimes, love becomes nothing more than, I am still here. Behind us, Jaden stacked crackers into tiny towers while talking to himself under his breath. Ordinary little boy things. Then suddenly, he looked up. Mom. I turned around. Yeah, baby. He studied my face for a second. Then Marcus. Then me again. His voice softened. Are poor people still allowed to have adventures? Everything inside the car stopped. The air itself felt still. Marcus looked at me immediately. I looked back at him. Neither of us moved, because suddenly, a question from a 6-year-old carried more weight than anything else inside that vehicle. Jaden frowned slightly. Did I say something bad? My throat tightened so hard it hurt. No, I reached back and touched his small hand gently. No, baby. My voice cracked anyway. I smiled again, but this one was real. Not practiced. Not forced. Because in that moment I understood something important. Children are not afraid of poverty. They are afraid of losing safety, losing home, losing us. I squeezed his fingers softly. Everybody deserves adventures. Jaden relaxed immediately. Simple answer. Simple trust. A minute later, he curled against his blanket and drifted back to sleep. Children still trust sleep. Adults lose that eventually. I turned back toward the window and cried silently, where nobody could see me. People think strength means carrying pain without falling apart. I used to believe that too. Then life taught me something different. Strength is waking up terrified and loving people anyway. Strength is smiling while your heart shakes. Strength is whispering not today while life tries to pull everything apart around you. Hours later, everyone slept except Marcus and me. Cars came and went. Shopping carts rolled through the lot. Somewhere in the distance, somebody laughed loudly. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary lives. Marcus stared through the windshield for a long time before finally speaking. Naomi? I looked over. His voice barely rose above a whisper. I don't know how to save us anymore. And hearing him say that frightened me more than sleeping in a parking lot ever could. Mourning inside a car feels different from mourning inside a home. Homes have familiar sounds. Coffee brewing, cabinets opening, bathroom doors shutting. Children arguing over cereal. But inside a car, mourning feels temporary. Borrowed. I woke before everyone else with a stiff neck and one numb leg twisted awkwardly beneath a blanket. For a few seconds I forgot where I was. Then reality returned all at once. Fogged windows, parking lot lights, blankets piled around sleeping children. Marcus asleep beside me looking older than he had a month earlier. Reality has a cruel habit. Every morning it gives people a few seconds of mercy before remembering them again. I turned and looked into the back seat. Jaden slept with one arm hanging over a pillow. Lila had pulled her blanket nearly over her face. Even asleep, she looked thoughtful. I smiled softly. Then guilt arrived right behind it. Guilt had become dependable lately. Marcus shifted beside me and opened his eyes slowly. For a second, confusion crossed his face too. Then reality settled back over him. Neither of us spoke. What exactly were we supposed to say? Good morning. Did you sleep well? Ready for another day pretending our lives haven't collapsed? Marcus rubbed both hands over his face. What time is it? I checked my phone. 6:14, he nodded slowly. We should move. I knew what he meant. Move before employees noticed us. Move before questions started. Move before our reality became visible to other people. Marcus started the car. The gas needle hovered close to empty. I noticed him notice it. Then I noticed him pretending he hadn't. Pretending had become our second language. Gas stations became part of our routine. That sentence still feels strange to say out loud. Routine usually belongs to stable things. Morning coffee, school pickup lines, family dinners, not gas station bathrooms. Marcus stayed in the car with the children while I went inside carrying a small bag with toothbrushes, soap, and hairbrushes. Things people stop appreciating until life turns them into privileges. I locked myself inside the bathroom and stared into the mirror. Long stare, long enough to barely recognize myself. I looked frightened. Not tired frightened. There is a difference. Tired says I need rest. Fear says I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I splashed cold water across my face and looked at myself again. Still frightened, I leaned both hands against the sink and closed my eyes, then whispered quietly, "Don't fall apart." I closed my eyes, counted to 5, then tried again. Please don't fall apart. Mothers say strange things to themselves during hard seasons. Keep smiling, keep moving, protect them. Do not fall apart. I practiced smiling in the mirror before leaving the bathroom. Actual practice, again and again until it looked believable. Because if my children looked at my face later, I wanted them to see safety, not fear. Movies teach people that survival looks heroic. Powerful speeches, dramatic music, people standing tall against impossible odds. Real survival rarely looks heroic. Sometimes survival looks like brushing your teeth in a gas station bathroom while quietly begging yourself not to cry. The library became our safe place. Air conditioning, clean bathrooms, internet access, soft chairs, quiet corners, where nobody asked questions. Funny how certain places become sacred during difficult seasons. We arrived around 10 every morning. Jaden disappeared into the children's section almost immediately. Lila always chose the same seat near the windows. Marcus searched job listings online for hours, and I pretended to read while secretly monitoring everyone else. Pretending again. Always pretending. Across the room, Jaden suddenly waved both arms wildly. "Mom." Several people looked over. I smiled, despite myself. "What?" He held up a dinosaur book proudly. "Did you know dinosaurs had feathers?" Marcus looked over seriously from his computer. No, Jaden nodded dramatically. "That changes everything." Marcus leaned back in his chair slowly, placing one hand dramatically against his chest. "Everything?" Jaden nodded with complete seriousness. "Everything." Marcus stood and walked toward him with exaggerated concern. "I need a minute to process this information." Jaden laughed loudly. Lila laughed quietly behind her book, and for a few moments, we looked like a normal family visiting the library. Not homeless, not frightened, not barely holding ourselves together, just ordinary people on an ordinary afternoon. Tiny moments became life rafts during that season. Small things kept us floating. Then I looked at Marcus again. He was smiling at Jaden, but exhaustion sat heavily behind his eyes. And suddenly, a terrible thought crossed my mind. How long can people keep pretending before pretending starts hurting more than the truth? 3 days later, Marcus tried to sell something else. And this time, Lila noticed. I spotted his wedding ring sitting in the cup holder while we drove across town. At first I thought he had removed it absent-mindedly. Then my stomach tightened. Marcus never took his ring off. Not at work, not while sleeping, not while showering. 20 years together, and I could count on one hand how many times I had seen him without it. I picked up the ring slowly, cold gold against my palm. Then I looked over at him. Marcus. He kept his eyes on the road, hands tight around the steering wheel. Marcus, still nothing. No, very quiet, but firm. He knew exactly what I meant. He finally glanced at me before looking back ahead. I was just thinking. People use softer words when the truth hurts. Considering maybe gentle, little disguises people place over painful decisions. I stared down at the ring resting in my hand. You were going to sell your wedding ring? Silence filled the car. Then Marcus answered quietly. We needed gas. Something inside me sank immediately. Not because of the ring itself, because of what it represented. 20 years! 20 years of promises, 20 years of choosing each other through every version of life. I remembered Marcus standing beside me in that tiny church. Warm summer afternoon. His hands trembling slightly, his voice shaking when he whispered, I'll choose you every day. And now here we were, sleeping in parking lots, counting dollars, watching pieces of ourselves disappear one by one. I looked over at him slowly. No. Marcus exhaled sharply. We need money, Naomi. No, stronger now. His jaw tightened. What am I supposed to do? There it was. Pain finally stepping fully into the open. I can't find work. His voice cracked slightly. Small crack. But I heard it. I can't keep watching this. He rubbed a hand across his face. I can't keep watching you pretend everything's okay. Cars passed around us while ordinary life continued in every direction. People heading home. People leaving work. People living inside routines we used to have. Home. Funny how one word could suddenly hurt so much. I looked down at the ring in my hand, then I reached across the console and slid it gently back onto his finger. Slowly, carefully, neither of us spoke, because sometimes love becomes too heavy for language. There are seasons when survival starts asking dangerous questions. What can you live without? People answer gradually at first. Comfort, plans, extra things, sleep. Then, eventually survival points towards something sacred. And that is when people realize storms do not only take possessions, they try to negotiate with identity too. Later that afternoon, we sat outside the library while Jaden chased pigeons across the sidewalk. Marcus had gone back inside to use the computers again. Lila sat beside me with a book open in her lap, or pretending to read. Hard to tell anymore. I noticed she had been staring at the same page for several minutes. Then softly, Mom? I looked over. Yeah? She kept staring ahead while speaking. When do we go home? Everything inside me tightened. Not again. Not yet. I forced another smile, automatically. Soon, baby. Lila lowered her eyes, then whispered, You always say soon. My chest tightened immediately. She closed the book carefully and finally looked directly at me. And for the first time, I saw something new in her expression. Not confusion. Not suspicion. Fear. Small, quiet, but unmistakable. Children can survive difficult truths. But uncertainty terrifies everyone, especially children. I reached over and took her hand gently. What are you thinking about? Silence stretched between us. Then she answered softly, I think everybody is pretending. Everything inside me stopped, because suddenly I realized something terrifying. Lila was no longer collecting clues. She had already assembled the picture, and once children see the truth, they cannot unsee it. After she said it, I smiled automatically again. By then, smiling had become instinct, like breathing, like blinking, like survival. But something deep inside me already knew the truth. The truth had stopped walking behind us. Now it was standing directly in front of us, waiting to be acknowledged. Lila lowered her eyes back to the book, but she still was not reading. Mothers know when children are pretending too. Funny, isn't it? Marcus and I spent weeks pretending for our children, Without realizing, our children had quietly started pretending for us too. That night we parked in another grocery store parking lot beneath another set of bright white lights. Different location. Same reality. Jaden fell asleep quickly with his blanket tucked beneath his chin and one hand dangling near the seat. Children still trust sleep. Adults eventually stop. Marcus sat staring through the windshield with both hands resting on the steering wheel. I sat beside him listening to the soft hum of distant traffic. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then, a quiet voice came from the back seat. "Mom, Lila?" I turned around slowly. She sat upright beneath her blanket, watching me carefully, always carefully. I smiled gently. "Yeah, baby." She twisted the corner of her blanket nervously around her fingers. "Can I ask you something?" Something inside me tightened immediately. Fear recognizes certain sentences before they finish. I nodded slowly. "Of course." Lila looked down for several seconds before finally whispering, "Did we lose our house?" Everything stopped again, I swear. Pain can freeze time when it wants to. Marcus became completely still beside me. I could hear my own heartbeat inside the silence. Lila finally looked up at me, and I wish she had not, because there was no anger in her face. No blame, only sadness. Quiet sadness. The kind children should never have to carry. Not at 9 years old, not because of adult problems. I swallowed hard. "Lila," she held my gaze steadily. "You can tell me." Her voice stayed soft, but her eyes never wavered, and suddenly every lie we had built for protection felt unbearably heavy. Every fake smile, every cheerful adventure, every careful explanation. Marcus lowered his head beside me without speaking. Then Lila whispered softly, "You cry when you think I am asleep." Silence. "Dad sits alone outside sometimes." Another silence. "You both keep saying soon." Her voice became even quieter, "And people don't camp in grocery store parking lots." No child should have needed to say that. No child should have carried that much awareness. I covered my mouth because tears escaped before I could stop them. Then something happened that completely shattered me. Lila climbed forward and wrapped both arms around me, then whispered gently into my shoulder, "I didn't say anything because I thought maybe you were scared." And I broke completely, because children are supposed to be protected by parents, not protecting their parents. No child should feel responsible for carrying adult grief. No child should become emotionally older than their age because life forced them there too early. I wrapped my arms around Lila and cried openly against her shoulder. Not hidden tears. Not quiet tears. Real ones. The kind that hurt while leaving your body. Marcus finally turned around in his seat and looked at us. His eyes were already wet. Already broken open. Then he asked softly, "How long?" Lila looked at him carefully. "A little while." Marcus closed his eyes immediately. Actually closed them, because the weight of those words was too heavy to look at directly. Children do not become strong because life asks politely. They become strong because they quietly adapt to things they were never supposed to carry. Adults call it maturity sometimes, but often it is just childhood learning survival too early. A movement beside us interrupted the silence. Jaden stirred awake, rubbing his eyes slowly. Confused. Sleepy. He looked around the car and frowned. "Why's everybody crying?" Nobody answered at first. Nobody moved. Children hear silence differently than adults do. Adults hear silence and assume nothing is happening. Children hear silence and know something is wrong. Jaden looked from me to Marcus, then to Lila, then back again. "Mom," his voice sounded smaller now. "Careful." I opened my arms slowly. "Come here, baby." He climbed into my lap immediately and rested his head against my chest. Still sleepy, still trusting us completely. And suddenly fear wrapped around me all over again. Because trust is beautiful and fragile, I looked toward Marcus. Marcus looked back at me, and I knew neither of us wanted this moment. but some truths eventually stop waiting. I took a slow breath, then another, then finally whispered, "We need to tell you something." Lila reached for my hand beside her. Marcus lowered his head. I swallowed hard before speaking. "We lost our apartment." Jaden blinked. Just blinked. No tears, no panic. Children hear words first, the weight comes later. He stared at me while thinking carefully, then asked, "So," his brow furrowed slightly, "where are we sleeping?" My throat tightened instantly. Marcus turned his face toward the window. "We don't know yet," I admitted softly. Silence settled heavily inside the car. Then, Jaden asked quietly, "The adventure?" There it was, the little lie we built out of love. Sitting between all of us now, heavy, painful. I lowered my eyes because suddenly I could not hold his gaze anymore. Beside him, Lila wrapped one arm gently around his shoulders. "We're okay," she whispered. Jaden looked at her, confused, still trying to understand. Then suddenly, his face changed, very slightly. "Did I do something wrong?" Marcus broke instantly, completely. He pushed the car door open so fast it startled all of us. Then he stepped outside and walked away quickly into the parking lot darkness. I stared after him speechless. Jaden looked frightened now. Actually frightened, because children become scared when adults stop feeling predictable. I turned toward Lila quickly. "Stay with your brother." Then I climbed out of the car too. I found Marcus standing beside the hood with both hands pressed against the roof. Head lowered, shoulders shaking. At first I thought he was angry. Then I realized Marcus was crying. Actually crying, not quietly, not hiding it, not pretending anymore. Just crying, and something inside me shattered seeing him like that. Marcus had always been our steady place, the one who fixed sinks, the one who worked overtime, the one who carried heavy furniture upstairs by himself because he refused to ask for help, the one who always said, "I got it." Now he stood beneath parking lot lights, looking like a man drowning in invisible weight. I walked toward him slowly and touched his arm gently. For several seconds, he did not move. Then finally I heard him whisper, "I can't do this anymore," barely louder than a breath. "I can't." I stared at him. "Marcus." He shook his head hard. "No," his voice cracked apart. "No," then louder this time. "I can't protect them." Silence. "I can't provide." He stared across the parking lot, as if searching for an answer that wasn't there. "I can't fix this." His breathing turned uneven. "I am watching my children sleep in parking lots." He hit the roof of the car lightly with the side of his fist. Not violence, just frustration spilling over. "I am watching my daughter protect us." His voice dropped lower, "And my son thinks this is his fault." Then finally he whispered the thing that hurt the most. "I don't know what to do anymore." Pain becomes dangerous when strong people run out of hiding places, because strong people rarely collapse all at once. First, they crack quietly. They keep smiling, keep carrying everyone else, keep pretending they are okay. Then, one day, the weight finally asks for payment, and afterward people say, "I never saw it coming." Even though pain had been leaving footprints everywhere for months, I stepped closer and wrapped both arms around him. At first, Marcus stayed stiff, motionless. Then suddenly he held onto me tightly, like someone trying not to sink. I buried my face against his shoulder and whispered softly, "You listen to me." His breathing slowed slightly. "You lost a job." Silence. "You lost an apartment." The parking lot seemed impossibly quiet around us. "But you did not lose us." Marcus still would not look at me. I reached up gently and made him meet my eyes. His face looked shattered, human, exhausted. "You are still their father." Tears rolled down his cheeks. "You are still my husband." Another tear. "You are still Marcus." He stared at me without speaking. Then I whispered the truth as clearly as I could. And I would choose you again. For the first time that night, something shifted in his eyes. Not happiness. Not relief. Just the smallest fragment of hope. Fragile. Barely there, but alive. Because hope is stubborn. Hope survives in broken places. Hope survives empty bank accounts. Hope survives parking lots. Hope survives terrified hearts long after logic gives up. But we still did not know life had one more obstacle waiting for us. 3 nights later, the car would not start. And I remember thinking, of course, not because I had become negative, because after enough difficult days, bad news starts feeling familiar. Marcus turned the key once. Click. Nothing. Again. Click. Still nothing. The car stayed silent. Nobody spoke. Marcus kept both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I looked toward the gas gauge, then toward him, then back toward the windshield. Because sometimes people keep checking reality hoping it changes while nobody is looking. Jaden sat up groggily in the back seat. We stopping. Marcus forced another smile, the careful kind. Car's tired. Buddy, Jaden nodded thoughtfully. Oh, then after a second he added innocently, like Dad? Everything inside the car froze. Marcus looked up into the rearview mirror. Jaden stared back at him honestly. No joke, no cruelty. Just observation. Marcus smiled softly. Very softly. Yeah. For the first time that night, some of the tension left his face. A little like Dad. Then he stepped out of the car and opened the hood. Not to fix anything, just to stand there staring at it, because sometimes people already know they cannot fix the problem, and they stand there anyway. I watched him through the windshield, watching exhaustion settle across his shoulders, watching a man trying very hard not to give up. Beside me, Lila watched him through the windshield too. Then she whispered softly, Mom. I turned toward her. Yeah, baby? Her eyes stayed on Marcus standing beneath the open hood. Is Dad okay? I followed her gaze. Marcus had both hands braced against the edge of the car, shoulders heavy beneath the parking lot lights. For a second, I could not answer because children notice hesitation too. Finally, I said quietly, he's trying very hard. Lila nodded slowly. I know. Those 2 words hurt more than almost anything else during that season. Children notice effort. Adults think children only measure outcomes. But children remember who stayed, who tried, who kept showing up even while exhausted. And sometimes, love is simply tired people, refusing to abandon each other. About 15 minutes later, a man walking through the parking lot slowed beside our car. Gray hoodie. Work boots. Coffee cup in one hand, he glanced toward Marcus, then toward the open hood. You okay? Marcus hesitated for half a second, and I saw it immediately. Pride fighting survival. Pride saying, handle it yourself. Exhaustion whispering, please. Marcus finally nodded toward the engine. Battery! The man looked under the hood briefly, then nodded once. Hold on. Marcus blinked. You serious? The man shrugged casually. I got cables. 5 minutes later he returned. And another man came with him. Then another, 3 strangers standing around our broken car in the middle of the night, helping a family they did not know. Jaden pressed his face against the window watching them. Then he looked at me. Mom. Yeah. Why are they helping us? I looked out at those men laughing quietly, while attaching jumper cables beneath harsh parking lot lights, and suddenly, I realized something. I had spent so much time staring at what we lost. I forgot to notice what still existed. Kindness still existed. I smiled softly at Jaden. Because people help people. He thought about that carefully, then nodded, like the answer made perfect sense. Children make complicated truths sound simple. A few seconds later, the car started. Marcus actually laughed, not the tired little laughs he had been forcing lately, A real laugh, full relieved, the first real laughter I had heard from him in weeks. One of the men grinned and slapped the hood lightly. Told you. Marcus shook every hand more than once. Thanked them repeatedly, his voice rough with emotion. Then he climbed back inside the car and closed the door gently. But instead of driving immediately, he just sat there quietly with both hands resting on the wheel. Then he looked over at me, eyes shining, and whispered, "I forgot people could still be kind." I reached across the console and held his hand tightly, because honestly, so had I. 2 weeks later, we sat outside the library again. Same benches, same routine, same uncertainty hanging over us. Jaden chased birds near the sidewalk, while Lila sat beside me reading. Marcus stared at job listings on his phone with the same exhausted concentration he carried every day now. Then suddenly, his phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, Marcus answered calls calmly. This time, his hands shook, actually shook. He looked at me once before answering hello. Silence. Yes, longer silence. Yes, sir. I watched his face carefully. Watching, waiting. Then his eyes widened slightly. Marcus stood up so fast the bench shifted beneath him. He turned away from us and covered his mouth with one hand, and instantly, I knew. Before he even spoke, I knew. Marcus lowered the phone slowly and turned back toward us. His eyes were already filling. I got it, I blinked. What? His voice cracked. The job. Everything inside me gave way all at once. I started crying immediately. Marcus laughed and cried at the same time. Jaden looked confused. Lila looked stunned. Marcus looked at all of us standing there outside that library bench and whispered the words we had needed for so long. We're going home. Months later, we moved into a tiny apartment, tiny kitchen, tiny bedrooms, tiny living room. Nothing impressive, nothing fancy, but the first night inside that apartment, I stood quietly in the hallway watching Marcus help Jaden unpack toys onto the floor. I watched Lila arranging books beside her bed. I listened to laughter moving naturally through rooms again, and suddenly I understood something life had spent months trying to teach me. Home was never walls, never furniture, never an address. Home was 4 people refusing to let go of each other, while everything else tried to fall apart. Because life can take comfort. Money. Plans. Security. But some families become strongest exactly where they almost broke. And sometimes the people who think they lost everything discover they were carrying the most important things with them the entire time. That night, after the children finally fell asleep inside their new apartment, I stood quietly in the kitchen, listening to the sound of my family breathing safely again. And for the first time in months, the silence did not feel frightening. It felt peaceful. Marcus walked up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. No speeches, no promises, just warmth, just home. Because sometimes home is not a place. Sometimes home is the people who kept holding your hand while everything else disappeared. If this story stayed with you, leave the word home in the comments. And before you go, another story is waiting. One about a woman who spent years believing silence made her weak, until the day silence became the very thing that saved her life. I worked 3 jobs to save my son's life. He never knew why I was always gone, and by the time he found out, he had already decided I did not love him anymore. Before I tell you how I got here, tell me where you are watching from, and what time it is where you are right now. Whether it is early morning, the middle of a busy day, or late at night when the world has finally gone quiet. I would love to know. I read every comment, and I am always grateful for the time you spend here with me. My name is Margot, and for 18 years, being Ethan's mother was the only identity I ever needed. I did not need to be successful or admired or even particularly happy. I just needed to be his. The woman who made him breakfast. The woman who knew exactly how he liked his sandwiches cut. The woman who could tell from the sound of his footsteps whether he had a good day at school or a terrible one. We had rituals, small, ordinary things that probably would not mean much to anyone else. Every Sunday morning, we made pancakes together. He would crack the eggs and I would mix the batter, and we would argue about whether chocolate chips belonged in pancakes or whether that was basically just eating dessert for breakfast. He always won that argument. I always pretended to be scandalized, and then I always added the chocolate chips. I can still see those mornings so clearly. The kitchen would be filled with early sunlight, the kind that makes everything look softer than it really is. Ethan would shuffle in wearing his old basketball shorts and a t-shirt that was getting too small for him, his hair sticking up in every direction. He never combed it on Sundays. That was part of the ritual too. "Morning, Mom," he would say, opening the refrigerator and staring into it like he was searching for the meaning of life. "Good morning, sweetheart. Pancakes today?" Is that even a question? He would pull out the eggs and the milk and set them on the counter with exaggerated care, like he was handling precious artifacts. "But we are doing chocolate chips, right?" Ethan chocolate chips in pancakes is basically dessert for breakfast. "Mom, we have had this conversation approximately 500 times. Chocolate chips are a breakfast food. They provide energy, they provide joy, they provide everything a growing teenager needs, and they provide cavities. I would say they provide happiness." He would reply, and he would grin at me, that crooked smile that made my heart ache with how much I loved him. "And happiness is more important than dental health." I am not sure your dentist would agree with that philosophy. I would retort, "My dentist does not have to eat boring plain pancakes. I do. Well, I would if you did not love me enough to add chocolate chips." And there it was. The trap he set every single Sunday. The implication that my love could be measured in chocolate chips. "You are manipulating me," I would say. "I am persuading you. There is a difference. Fine, chocolate chips. But only because I love you." I know. He would crack the eggs into the bowl, always making a little ceremony of it. That is why it works. Every night before bed, even when he got older and his friends would have mocked him for it, he would come into the living room and sit next to me on the couch. He would tell me about his day. Not the surface things, the real things. The girl he liked who did not know he existed. The math test he was worried about. The way his friend Marcus said something that hurt his feelings. But he did not know how to bring it up. Those conversations were sacred to me. I would turn off the television, put down whatever I was reading, and give him my complete attention. Sometimes he would talk for 5 minutes, sometimes for an hour. It did not matter. I was there. I was present. I was his. "Mom, can I ask you something?" he said one night. About 3 months before everything changed, always. "Do you think people can tell when you like them? Like, do you think it is obvious?" I smiled. This was about the girl. It was always about the girl lately. Her name was Sophie, and she sat 2 rows ahead of him in English class, and apparently she had smiled at him once in the hallway, and he had been analyzing that smile for 2 weeks. "I think some people are better at reading those signals than others," I said carefully. "Why? Are you worried Sophie does not know you exist?" His ears turned red. "How did you know I was talking about Sophie? Because you have mentioned her approximately 40 times in the last 2 weeks. I have not, Ethan. You told me about her shoes. You do not tell me about people's shoes unless you are very interested in the person wearing them." He groaned and covered his face with his hands. I am pathetic. You are not pathetic. You are 14. This is what 14 looks like. Did you know Dad liked you when you first met him? The question caught me off guard. We did not talk about his father much. David had left when Ethan was 7, and the wound had mostly healed over. But sometimes it still ached. I did, I said quietly. Your father was not subtle about his feelings. He was very confident, very sure of himself. Is that why you liked him? Partly, but also because he made me laugh. And because he paid attention to me, really paid attention. He remembered things I said. He noticed when I was sad. He cared. At least he had cared in the beginning. Before life got hard, before responsibility became too heavy, before he decided that being a husband and father was not the adventure he had signed up for. But I did not say that part. Ethan did not need to carry his father's failures. So I should pay attention to Sophie. Remember things she says? I think you should be yourself. And if Sophie is the right person, she will notice you. And if she does not, then she is not the right person. He nodded slowly, processing this. Then he leaned his head on my shoulder, something he had not done in months. Thanks, Mom. For what? For always being here, for always listening, for not making me feel stupid about this stuff. I kissed the top of his head. I will always be here, sweetheart. Always. I meant it when I said it. I believed it with everything in me. I had no idea how soon I would break that promise. I knew my son. I knew the way his voice changed when he was hiding something. I knew the way he chewed his bottom lip when he was anxious. I knew that he hated green beans but loved broccoli, which made no sense to me, but I never questioned it. I knew that he was afraid of thunderstorms but would never admit it. So on stormy nights, I would make hot chocolate and suggest we watch a movie together, giving him an excuse to not be alone. I knew him, and he knew me. We were a team. It was just the two of us. And that was enough. Until the day it was not enough anymore. Until the day the doctor said words that turned my entire world into something I did not recognize. It started with bruises. Small ones at first. On his arms. His legs. Ethan played basketball, so bruises were normal, but these were different. They appeared without explanation. They did not fade the way bruises should. Then came the fatigue. He would come home from school and go straight to his room. He stopped wanting to go out with his friends. He stopped staying up late. He was always tired. Maybe you are getting sick, I said one afternoon when I found him asleep on the couch at 4 p.m. Do you want me to make you some soup? I am fine, Mom, just tired. You are always tired lately. I am a teenager. We are supposed to be tired. But this was different. I could feel it, mothers know. We know when something is wrong with our children, the way we know when a storm is coming. It is instinct. It is cellular. I made an appointment with our family doctor, Dr. Morrison. Had been seeing Ethan since he was a baby. He was kind and thorough and never made me feel like I was overreacting. He examined Ethan carefully, asked questions, pressed on his abdomen, looked at the bruises. I want to run some blood work, he said. Just to be safe. Blood work for what? Ethan asked. Just routine tests, nothing to worry about. But I could see it in Dr. Morrison's eyes. He was worried. He was trying not to show it, but I could see it. The blood work came back 3 days later. Dr. Morrison called me at work. Mrs. Chen, I need you to bring Ethan to County General Hospital. Today, this afternoon. My stomach dropped. What is wrong? His white blood cell count is extremely elevated. I have already called ahead to the pediatric oncology department. They are expecting you. Oncology, cancer. The word hit me like a fist to the chest. Are you sure? I asked, even though I knew it was a stupid question. Doctors do not send you to oncology unless they are sure. I am not sure of anything yet, Dr. Morrison said gently, but we need to find out what is going on. Can you get him there this afternoon? Yes, of course. I picked Ethan up from school early. He was confused, annoyed at being pulled out of class. He did not understand why we were going to the hospital. I did not know how to explain it without terrifying him. Dr. Morrison wants you to see a specialist, I said as we drove. Just to check on those bruises? Mom, I am fine. This is ridiculous. Humor me. We sat in the waiting room at County General for 45 minutes. The pediatric oncology wing was decorated with bright colors and cheerful murals, but it could not hide what it was. A place where children came to fight for their lives. I watched the other families. A mother holding a bald little girl who could not have been more than 5. A father reading to his son who was connected to an IV pole. A teenager with a scarf wrapped around her head, scrolling through her phone with the practiced boredom of someone who had been here too many times. This could not be happening. Not to us, not to Ethan Chen. A nurse called his name. We followed her back to an examination room. She took his vitals, asked him questions, smiled in that professional way that gave nothing away. Dr. Patel will be with you shortly. We waited. Ethan sat on the examination table, swinging his legs, looking at his phone. I sat in the chair by the window, watching him, memorizing him, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the way he chewed on his thumbnail when he was nervous, the way he kept glancing at me like he was trying to figure out how worried he should be. Mom, seriously, what is going on? I do not know yet, sweetheart. We are going to find out. The door opened and Dr. Patel walked in. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her late 30s, with kind eyes and an air of calm competence. Hello, Ethan, Mrs. Chen. I am Dr. Patel. She shook both our hands and sat down on the rolling stool. I have been looking at your blood work, Ethan, and I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay? I guess. Have you been feeling more tired than usual? Yeah, but I thought that was just from school and basketball. Have you had any fevers? Night sweats? Maybe. I do not know. I get hot at night sometimes. Any pain in your bones or joints? My legs hurt sometimes, but I thought that was from growing. My mom says I am having a growth spurt, Dr. Patel nodded, making notes. Have you noticed any swelling in your neck or under your arms? Ethan touched his neck. I do not think so. She stood up and examined him, felt his neck, his armpits, his abdomen. She was gentle but thorough. I watched her face, trying to read her expression, trying to find some hint of what she was thinking. Finally, she sat back down and looked at both of us. I am going to be very honest with you both, she said. Ethan's blood work shows some abnormalities that concern me. His white blood cell count is very high, and the cells do not look normal. I need to do more tests to be certain, but I believe Ethan may have leukemia. The word hung in the air like smoke. Leukemia. Cancer. My son has cancer. My hands gripped the arms of the chair so hard, my knuckles turned white. I could feel the plastic edge digging into my palms. The only thing keeping me anchored to the chair, to the room, to reality. My stomach dropped. It was not a gentle sinking. It was a violent plunge, as if the floor had opened beneath me and I was falling through empty space. I could not breathe. The air would not come. My chest tightened. My throat closed. I opened my mouth, but nothing happened. The fluorescent lights above seemed impossibly bright, almost blinding. They hummed with a sound I had never noticed before, a high-pitched whine that suddenly filled my entire world. The pediatric murals on the walls, the smiling animals, the cheerful rainbows, now felt obscene. Mocking. How dare they be so bright and colorful in a room where my son's life was being dismantled? The clinical smell of the hospital room pressed in on me. Antiseptic, sterile, cold. It filled my nostrils and made my stomach turn. My vision began to narrow, tunneling inward until all I could see was Dr. Patel's mouth moving, her words reaching me as if from very far away. The edges of my sight blurred. The room tilted slightly, then righted itself, then tilted again. My hand reached out and gripped Ethan's leg. I needed to touch him. I needed to know he was real, that this was real, that I was not having a stroke or a heart attack or some kind of psychotic break. What does that mean? Ethan asked. His voice was small, scared. Am I going to die? No, Dr. Patel said firmly. You are not going to die. Leukemia is very treatable, especially in young people, but we need to start treatment as soon as possible. The words seemed to come from underwater. Muffled, distant, but then they sharpened. They became crystal clear. Every syllable cut like glass. I could hear the papers on her desk. The sound of her pen clicking, the soft hum of the machines monitoring Ethan's vitals. Every small sound became hyper-clear, magnified, as if my hearing had suddenly sharpened to an impossible degree. I could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. I could hear the blood rushing in my own ears. What kind of treatment? I asked. My voice sounded strange. Distant, like it was coming from someone else's mouth. Like I was listening to myself from very far away. Chemotherapy, possibly radiation. We will need to do a bone marrow biopsy to confirm the diagnosis and determine exactly what type of leukemia we are dealing with. But I want you both to know that the survival rates for pediatric leukemia are very good. We have excellent treatment protocols. We have every reason to be optimistic. Optimistic, that word. She was talking about my son having cancer and using the word optimistic. The warmth was draining from my body. I could feel it leaving, pooling somewhere in my chest, leaving my extremities cold and numb. My fingers were ice. My face felt like it belonged to someone else. The color was draining from my cheeks. I could feel it happening. The blood retreating from my skin, leaving me pale and hollow. Tears formed in my eyes but did not fall. They gathered at the corners, caught between my eyelids and my cheeks, suspended in the moment before breaking. My mouth had gone completely dry. I tried to swallow and could not. My tongue felt like sandpaper against the roof of my mouth. The weight of her words was crushing down on me. Leukemia treatment, bone marrow biopsy, chemotherapy, radiation. Each word was a stone piling on top of me, pressing me deeper into the chair, deeper into this moment, deeper into a life I did not recognize anymore. My body had gone numb, not peaceful numb, shock numb. The kind of numbness that comes when your mind cannot process what your ears are hearing, when reality becomes too large to fit inside your skull. How soon do we start? I asked. I want to admit Ethan today. We will do the biopsy tomorrow morning and start treatment as soon as we have the results. Today, Ethan looked at me, his eyes wide with panic. Mom, I have a math test tomorrow. I have basketball practice. I reached for his hand. We will figure all that out, sweetheart. Right now, we need to focus on getting you better. But I feel fine. I am just tired. This does not make sense. Dr. Patel leaned forward. I know this is scary, Ethan. I know it does not feel real. But your body is sick right now, even if you do not feel it yet. And we need to start fighting this before it gets worse. Do you understand? He nodded, but I could see the tears forming in his eyes. He was trying so hard to be brave, trying to hold it together. Can I have a minute alone with my mom? He asked. Of course. Dr. Patel stood up. I will be right outside. Take all the time you need. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Ethan looked at me, really looked at me. And then he started to cry. Mom, I am scared. I moved to the examination table and wrapped my arms around him. He buried his face in my shoulder and sobbed. My strong, brave boy who never wanted anyone to see him cry. My son who was always so careful to seem older than he was. He cried like a child, like the little boy he still was underneath everything. I know, baby. I know you are scared. I am scared too. What if the treatment does not work? What if I die? You are not going to die. Do you hear me? You are not going to die. We are going to fight this. You and me. We are going to win. How do you know? Because I am your mother, and I will not let anything happen to you. I promise. It was a promise I had no right to make, a promise I had no power to keep. But I made it anyway. because that is what mothers do. We make impossible promises to our children, and then we spend the rest of our lives trying to keep them. He pulled back and wiped his eyes. Okay, we can do this. We can do this together. Together, always. I remember the way Ethan looked at me when Dr. Patel said the word cancer. His eyes were so wide, so scared. He was trying to be brave, trying to hold it together, but I could see the little boy underneath the teenage bravado, the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the little boy who needed his mother to tell him everything would be okay. So that is what I did. I took his hand and I looked him in the eyes and I said, "We are going to fight this. You and me. We are going to win." Dr. Patel came back into the room and we went through the logistics. Admission paperwork, consent forms, treatment plans. She explained everything carefully, making sure we understood each step, and then, almost as an afterthought, she mentioned something else. "There is one more thing I want to discuss with you," she said. She pulled out a folder and opened it on the desk. "There is an experimental treatment protocol that has shown remarkable results in cases like Ethan's. It is a targeted therapy that attacks the cancer cells more precisely than traditional chemotherapy. The survival rate is significantly higher. The side effects are less severe. Recovery time is faster." Hope bloomed in my chest. That sounds perfect. When can we start? Dr. Patel's expression shifted, became more careful. There is a complication. The treatment is still in clinical trials. The pharmaceutical company has not received FDA approval yet, which means it is not covered by insurance. The cost would be entirely out of pocket. The hope died as quickly as it had appeared. "How much?" I asked. She hesitated. Then she wrote a number on a piece of paper and slid it across the desk. I stared at that number. $72,000 for the full treatment protocol, 18 months of medication, monitoring and care. $72,000. It might as well have been $1 million. It might as well have been the moon. There was no possible way I could afford it. I was a single mother working as a part-time administrative assistant. I lived paycheck to paycheck. I had maybe $800 in my savings account. "I understand this is a significant financial burden," Dr. Patel said gently, "and I want to be clear that the standard treatment protocol is also very effective. Ethan will receive excellent care either way, but if you can find a way to afford the experimental treatment, I believe it gives him the best possible chance." I looked at my son, at his scared eyes, at the way he was gripping my hand like I was the only solid thing in a world that had just turned to quicksand, and I knew I would find a way. "We will do it," I said. "Whatever it takes. We will do it," Dr. Patel nodded slowly. She had seen this before, mothers making impossible promises. "I will have my office manager draw up the payment plan options." "We can work with you, Mrs. Chen. We want Ethan to have the best possible chance." "Thank you. The standard treatment will begin immediately. If you decide to proceed with the experimental protocol, we can integrate it into his care plan within the next few weeks. Take some time to think about it, talk to your family, explore your options." But I did not need time. I did not need to think about it. I already knew what I was going to do. I was going to save my son's life, no matter what it cost me. That night, after Ethan had been admitted and settled into his hospital room, after the nurses had checked his vitals and started his IV, after he had finally fallen asleep with the television playing softly in the background, I sat in the chair by his bed and stared at that number. $72,000. $4,000 a month for 18 months. I made $2,300 a month at my current job. The math did not work. It could not work unless I made it work. Some decisions do not feel like decisions at all. They feel like the only possible path forward, like standing at the edge of a cliff with your child in your arms and realizing the only way to save them is to learn to fly. I called my supervisor the next morning and told her I was resigning. She was shocked. I had been a reliable employee for 7 years. But I could not explain the real reason. I could not tell her that her paycheck, as steady as it was not enough to save my son's life, that I needed to find work that paid more. Work that could be stacked, and layered and pieced together into something that might actually cover the impossible cost of keeping Ethan alive. "Is everything okay?" she asked, concern in her voice. "My family needs me," I said. It was the truth. Just not the whole truth. I pulled out my phone and called my sister Rachel. It was late, almost 11 at night, but she answered on the second ring. "Margot, what is wrong?" "Ethan has leukemia." Silence. Then, "Oh my God." "Oh, Margot, I am so sorry. Is he okay? Where are you?" "We are at County General. They admitted him tonight. They are starting treatment tomorrow. I am coming. I will leave right now. I can be there in 3 hours. "No, Rachel, no, you do not need to do that. I just needed to hear your voice." "Margot, your son has cancer. I am coming, Rachel. Please, I need you to stay there. I need to know that when everything starts falling apart, there is still someone I can call. Right now, I just need to talk." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay, talk to me. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the diagnosis, the treatment plan, the experimental therapy, the cost, $72,000. Rachel's voice was sharp with disbelief. "How are you supposed to come up with that kind of money?" "I do not know, but I will figure it out." "Margot, that is impossible. You cannot afford that." "I have to afford it. It is his best chance." "What about David? Can he help?" I laughed bitterly. "David has not paid child support in 3 years. He is not going to suddenly show up with $72,000. Have you asked him?" "No, and I am not going to. He made his choice when he left. I am not going to beg him to care about his own son." Rachel sighed. "What are you going to do?" "I am going to find a way. I will get another job, 2 jobs, whatever it takes." "Margot, I am not discussing this." "Rachel, I am doing it. I just wanted you to know what was happening. I can help. I have some savings. Not much, but no. You have your own family, your own bills. I am not taking your money. You are my sister. Ethan is my nephew. Let me help. You are helping by being there, by listening. That is enough." It was not enough. Nothing was enough. But it was all I could accept. We talked for another hour. She told me about her kids, about her husband, about the ordinary problems of ordinary life. It was comforting, a reminder that the world was still turning even though mine had just stopped. When we finally hung up, I sat in the darkness of Ethan's hospital room and watched him sleep. His face was peaceful, innocent. He had no idea what was coming. The pain, the fear, the fight, and he had no idea what I was about to do to keep him alive. The next morning, while Ethan was in surgery for his bone marrow biopsy, I went to the hospital's human resources department. "I am looking for a job," I told the woman at the desk. "Her name tag," said Linda. She had kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. "What kind of position are you looking for?" "Anything. I have some nursing training. I never finished my degree, but I have clinical experience. I recently left my previous position to focus on finding work that would allow me to earn more. I need flexibility and better hourly rates." Linda typed something into her computer. "We have a patient care technician position available on the pediatric floor. Night shift, midnight to 8 in the morning. The pay is $18 an hour." I did the math quickly in my head. $18 an hour, 8 hours a night, 5 nights a week. That was $720 a week, almost $3,000 a month. Combined with whatever other work I could find, that would be a start. Just barely a start. I will take it. Linda looked surprised. "Do you not want to know more about the position, the responsibilities, the requirements? I will do whatever you need me to do." "When can I start?" She studied me for a moment. Then her expression softened. "Your son is a patient here. Is he not?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I understand," she said quietly. "Let me see what I can do." She made some phone calls, pulled some strings. By the time Ethan was out of surgery, I had a job. I would start training the following week. I did not tell Ethan. Not yet. He had enough to worry about. The biopsy confirmed what Dr. Patel had suspected. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, aggressive but treatable. They started chemotherapy immediately. I watched my son go through hell. The nausea, the exhaustion, the hair loss. He was so sick, so weak. But he fought. Every day he fought, and every day I worked. I would spend the day with him at the hospital, hold his hand during treatments, read to him when he could not sleep, bring him food he could not eat. And then, at 10:30 at night, I would kiss him goodbye and tell him I would see him in the morning. Mrs. Kowalski, our neighbor, would come and sit with him overnight. She was a widow with insomnia who had known Ethan since he was a baby. She refused to let me pay her. "You are doing what any mother would do," she said. "Let me help." So I let her help. Because I had no choice, I would leave the hospital and drive to the pediatric floor where I worked. I would change into scrubs and spend the next 8 hours caring for other people's children, checking vitals, changing bedpans, comforting scared kids in the middle of the night. The irony was not lost on me. I was a mother working nights at a children's hospital, surrounded by sick kids, while my own sick kid was 3 floors above me. But the paycheck was bigger, and that was what mattered. My supervisor on the night shift was a man named Mr. Torres. He was in his 50s, with gray hair and a calm demeanor that made everyone around him feel safe. He noticed things. He paid attention. One night, about 3 weeks into my new job, he found me sitting in the break room at 4 in the morning. I was supposed to be on my break, but I had fallen asleep with my head on the table. "Margot." His voice was gentle. "Wake up." I jerked awake, disoriented. "I am sorry. I am so sorry." I just closed my eyes for a second. "It is okay. You are on break. You are allowed to rest." He sat down across from me. "But I am worried about you." "You look exhausted." "I am fine." "You are not fine. You have been here 3 weeks, and I have watched you get thinner and paler every single shift." "What is going on?" I wanted to lie, to brush it off. But I was so tired of carrying everything alone. "My son is a patient here," I said quietly. "He has leukemia. I am working nights so I can afford his treatment." Mr. Torres' expression shifted. Understanding, compassion. "I am so sorry. How old is he?" 14. "That is hard, really hard. I am managing." "Are you?" "Because from where I am sitting, it looks like you are running yourself into the ground. I do not have a choice. There are always choices." "Margot, maybe not good ones, but choices. Not for me, not right now." He nodded slowly. "Okay, but I want you to know that if you need anything, if you need to adjust your schedule or take time off, you come talk to me. We will figure something out." "Thank you. And Margot, take care of yourself. Your son needs you alive and healthy. Not just present." I knew he was right, but I did not know how to do what he was asking. I did not know how to take care of myself when every ounce of energy I had was going toward keeping Ethan alive. For a few weeks, it almost worked. I would come home at 7:30 in the morning, exhausted but functional. Ethan would be getting ready for his day at the hospital. I would sit with him during his morning treatment. We would talk. I would hold his hand. And then I would go home, sleep for a few hours, and be back at the hospital by early afternoon. It was not perfect, but it was manageable, until I realized it still was not enough. The medical bills kept coming. The treatment was working, thank God, but every appointment came with another invoice. Medications, lab work, scans. The experimental therapy itself, even with the payment plan, I was drowning. I needed more money. I found a morning job at a coffee shop downtown, a place called Morning Brew 6, in the morning to 10 in the morning. 4 hours. Minimum wage plus tips. It was not much, but it was something. The owner was a woman named Patricia. She was in her 60s, with dyed red hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She looked at my application and then looked at me. "You have another job," she said. It was not a question. Yes. What hours nights? Midnight to 8, she raised an eyebrow. So you would be coming here straight from your night shift? Yes. That is not sustainable. I need the job. She studied me for a long moment. Then she sighed. Fine, but if you fall asleep on my customers, you are fired. Understood. Understood. Thank you. My new schedule looked like this. Leave for the hospital at midnight. Work until 8 in the morning. Drive straight to the coffee shop. Work from 8:30 until 12:30 in the afternoon. Go home. Sleep from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 4:30 in the afternoon. Wake up, shower, change my clothes. Ethan would be home by 5 o'clock. On treatment days, he came back from the oncology clinic exhausted, sometimes nauseous, sometimes in pain from the chemotherapy. On non-treatment days, he was home from his online classes, trying to keep up with schoolwork when his body allowed it. Either way, I had him from 5 o'clock until midnight. 7 hours. 420 minutes. That was real time. That was presence. That was enough, I told myself. That was enough to sustain us both. I would make dinner. We would eat together at the kitchen table. I would ask him about his day, about his treatment, about how he was feeling. Sometimes he would talk, sometimes he would not. But we were together, in the same room, breathing the same air, that had to count for something. After dinner, we would sit on the couch. Sometimes we watched television. Sometimes we just sat in silence. I would rest my head on his shoulder, and he would let me. These were the moments I lived for. These 7 hours were the reason I could survive the other 17. I told myself this schedule was temporary, just until we got ahead of the bills, just until Ethan finished his treatment, just until things got easier. I did not know yet that this was not going to be enough. The coffee shop was busy, relentless, people rushing in before work, demanding their complicated orders, annoyed when I moved too slowly or made a mistake. I smiled and took orders and made lattes and pretended I was not about to collapse. There was one regular customer who came in every morning at 8:30, an older man named George. He always ordered the same thing, black coffee, no sugar. He would sit at the corner table and read the newspaper for exactly 30 minutes. One morning, about 2 weeks into my new job, he looked up from his paper and said, "You look terrible." I laughed despite myself. "Thank you. That is exactly what every woman wants to hear." "I am serious. You look like you have not slept in a month." "I am fine," I told him. "You are not fine. What is going on?" I do not know why I told him. Maybe because he was a stranger. Maybe because I was too tired to lie. Maybe because I needed someone, anyone, to acknowledge what I was going through. "My son has cancer," I said. "I am working 2 jobs to pay for his treatment." George set down his newspaper. "How old is your son?" 14. "That is rough." "I am sorry. Thank you. How much do you need?" The question caught me off guard. "What? How much money do you need for the treatment?" "I cannot ask you for money." "You did not ask," I offered. "How much?" $72,000. He whistled low. "That is a lot, I know." He pulled out his wallet and took out 2 $20 bills. He put them in the tip jar. "It is not much, but it is something." I felt tears prick my eyes. "You do not have to do that." "I know, but I want to." "Good luck, Margot. I hope your son gets better." "Thank you after that." George always left a generous tip, sometimes $20, sometimes $50. Once, $100. He never mentioned it, never made a big deal of it, just left the money and went back to his newspaper. Those tips helped, not enough to make a real difference in the bills, but enough to buy groceries, enough to put gas in my car, enough to remind me that there was still kindness in the world. Ethan started to notice I was gone more. He would ask me where I was going so early in the morning. I told him I had picked up some extra shifts at work. He accepted that answer because he was 14 and still trusted me completely. But I could see the confusion in his eyes. The hurt. He did not understand why I was never there anymore. One afternoon, I came home from the coffee shop to find him sitting on the couch, still wearing his jacket. His backpack was on the floor beside him. The hospital wristband was still on his arm. Pale blue paper against pale skin. He was staring at the television, but the screen was black. He was not watching anything. He was just staring. My chest tightened the moment I saw him. "Hey, sweetheart!" I dropped my purse on the counter, my hands trembling from exhaustion. I had been awake since 7:30 that morning. My feet ached. My back ached. Everything ached. How was treatment today? He did not look at me. Fine. Just fine. Yeah, I sat down next to him, close enough to touch him, but not quite touching. The couch cushions sank beneath my weight. I could smell the antiseptic scent clinging to his clothes, that sharp, sterile hospital smell that never quite washed out. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not really, Ethan." I reached for his hand, but he pulled it away. "What is wrong?" He turned to look at me then. His eyes were red-rimmed, not from crying, from something worse, from holding back tears for hours. "Where were you this morning?" My stomach dropped. "I told you. I had to work. I know you had to work." His voice was flat, hollow. "I am asking where you were when I was getting my infusion." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Ethan, I waited for you." He was not yelling. That would have been easier. He was just stating facts, cold, detached. "I sat in that chair for 3 hours. I watched them put the needle in. I watched the bag drip. I watched all the other kids with their parents sitting next to them. And I waited for you to show up. I am so sorry. I had to. You had to work. I know." He turned back to the black television screen. "You are always working now. You are never here. I am here right now. For how long?" His jaw tightened. I could see the muscle working beneath his skin. "An hour, 2 hours before you have to leave again. I am doing the best I can, are you?" His voice was sharp. "Because it feels like you are avoiding me. I am not avoiding you. I am working so we can pay for your treatment. We have insurance. Why do you need to work so much?" I could not tell him. Not yet. He was still so sick, still so fragile. He did not need the weight of knowing how much his life was costing. "I just do," I said weakly. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned back to the television. "Whatever." I wanted to reach for him, to pull him close, to explain everything, but I could not, so I just sat there, feeling the distance between us grow. But then everything got worse. 6 months into treatment, Dr. Patel called me into her office after one of Ethan's routine monitoring scans. The moment I saw her face, I knew something was wrong. "Sit down, Margot." I sat. My hands gripped the armrests of the chair. The leather was cold beneath my palms. "What is it? Is the cancer back?" "No, not exactly." She pulled up images on her computer screen, charts, numbers. Things I did not understand. The scans show what we call minimal residual disease. MRD. It means there are still leukemic cells present in Ethan's system. Not enough to be considered active cancer, but enough to be concerning. My throat closed. What does that mean? It means the treatment is working, but not as completely as we had hoped. These lingering cells could lead to relapse if we do not eliminate them entirely. So what do we do? Dr. Patel folded her hands on his desk. Her wedding ring caught the fluorescent light. "We extend the treatment. Another 6 months of the experimental protocol. But this time, we have to intensify it significantly. 6 more months. 6 more months." The words echoed in my head like a death sentence. "How much?" My voice sounded hollow. Distant, like it was coming from someone else's body. She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. "The cost will be approximately $60,000 over the 6-month period." I stared at her. $60,000 for 6 months. The first 18 months cost $72,000. I know it seems disproportionate." She leaned forward, her expression pained. "But the MRD protocol is different from standard treatment. We have to escalate the intensity dramatically. Higher dosages of the experimental drugs. More aggressive infusion schedules. Instead of treatment every 2 weeks, we are looking at weekly sessions. Sometimes twice weekly. Why? Because we are not just treating active cancer anymore. We are hunting down individual cells that are hiding in his system. It requires precision, intensity. We will need PET scans every 3 weeks instead of every 2 months. Comprehensive blood work twice a week. Consultations with additional specialists to monitor for complications. The side effects at this level of treatment become more severe, which means more medications to manage them, more hospital visits, more monitoring. I could not breathe. The room felt too small, too hot, Margot. I would not recommend this if it were not absolutely critical. Without this intensified protocol, the likelihood of relapse is significant. We are talking about Ethan's survival. Is there any other option? Not one I would feel comfortable recommending. This is his best chance. I nodded. My vision blurred. I blinked and a tear fell onto my lap, darkening the fabric of my jeans. Okay, I whispered. Okay, we will do it. I know this is an impossible burden. When do we start? Next week, I will have my office coordinator send you the updated treatment schedule and the financial breakdown. I stood. My legs felt unsteady. The room tilted slightly, and I gripped the edge of his desk to steady myself. Thank you, Dr. Patel, Margot. She stood as well. You are doing everything right. You are saving your son's life. I nodded again, because I could not speak. If I spoke, I would break. And I could not afford to break, not yet. I made it to my car before the tears came. I sat in the parking lot of the oncology clinic with my hands on the steering wheel and I cried. I cried so hard my chest hurt. I cried until my throat was raw. I cried until there was nothing left inside me but emptiness and exhaustion. 6 more months. $60,000 more. Nearly as much money for 6 months as I had paid for the entire first 18 months. Because the treatment had to become more aggressive, more intense, more expensive, more money, always more money. I could not do this. I could not survive this. I was already barely holding on, but what choice did I have? Let my son die. Let those lingering cancer cells multiply and take him from me. No. No, I would not do that. I would never do that. I would find a way. I always found a way. The tears slowed. My breathing steadied, and my mind began to move through the impossible calculations with the cold precision of someone who had no other option. I was already working 12 hours a day between the hospital and the coffee shop. I was already sleeping 3.5 hours a night. I was already stretched so thin I could barely function. But I needed more money, and there were only so many hours in a day. I stared through the windshield at nothing. At the gray concrete, at the other cars in the lot, at the people walking past who had no idea that inside this vehicle, a mother was calculating the exact price of her son's survival. The math did not work, no matter how I arranged it, no matter how I tried to stretch the hours, or cut the sleep, or find some hidden pocket of time I had missed. Unless I took a third job, the thought made me physically ill. But what else could I do? A cleaning company that serviced office buildings downtown, 7:30 at night to 11:30 at night, 4 hours. Just 4 hours. I could do that. I could fit that in between getting home from the coffee shop and leaving for the hospital. The company was called Sunrise Cleaning Services. The manager was a man named Rick. He was young, maybe 30, with a tired face and a cigarette always hanging from his lips. You have experience, he asked when I came in for the interview. No, but I am a hard worker. I will do whatever you need. The shift is 7:30 at night to 11:30 at night. 4 nights a week. Minimum wage, no benefits, you okay with that? Yes, I am. You have another job. 2, he raised an eyebrow. 2 jobs, and you want a third. I need the money. Must be pretty desperate. Yes, I am desperate, he shrugged. Fine. You start Monday. Do not be late. Do not call in sick. Do not screw up. Got it, got it. And I nodded. But my hands were already trembling. I pressed my palms flat against my thighs, trying to steady them, but I could feel the shake running through my entire body like an electric current. My throat tightened. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed their mechanical song, and I became acutely aware of how small the office was, how the walls seemed to be closing in. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, loud and frantic, like a bird trapped in a cage. This was real now. This was actually happening. I would work the coffee shop from 8:30 to 12:30 in the afternoon. Go home. Sleep from 1 in the afternoon to 4:30 in the afternoon. Be awake when Ethan got home from the hospital. Spend the evening with him from 5 to 7 at night. Leave at 7:30. Clean offices until 11:30 at night. Drive to the hospital. Work from midnight to 8 in the morning. Drive to the coffee shop, start over. I was working nearly 100 hours a week. I did not tell Ethan about the cleaning job. I did not tell anyone except my sister Rachel, who lived 3 hours away and called me every week to check in. Margot, this is going to kill you, she said when I told her. It is keeping him alive, I said. That is all that matters. What good is keeping him alive if you are not alive to be his mother? I did not have an answer for that, so I just kept going. The cleaning job was brutal, emptying trash cans, vacuuming floors, scrubbing toilets. My hands were raw from chemicals, my back ached from bending, my feet throbbed from standing. But I did it. Every night, 4 hours of mindless, exhausting work. And then I would drive to the hospital and do it all over again. There were nights I fell asleep at red lights. Nights I could not remember the drive home. Nights I woke up in my car in the hospital parking lot with no memory of how I got there. I was running on fumes, on desperation, on the sheer force of will that comes from being a mother who refuses to let her child die. Pain changes shape when it stays too long. Eventually it stops feeling like a wound and starts feeling like furniture. Something you walk around every day without noticing how much space it takes. Ethan was in remission within 8 months. The experimental treatment worked. His cancer was gone. Dr. Patel called it a miracle. I called it worth it. But by then, the damage was already done. Ethan had started to pull away from me. It happened slowly, so slowly I did not notice it at first. He stopped waiting up for me in the evenings. He stopped telling me about his day. When I asked him questions, he gave me one-word answers. How was school? Fine. Did you finish your homework? Yeah. Do you want to watch a movie tonight? I am tired. He was not tired. He was angry. I could see it in the way he looked at me. Or rather, the way he did not look at me. He looked past me, through me, like I was a stranger who happened to live in his house. I told myself it was normal teenage behavior. Boys his age pulled away from their mothers. It was developmentally appropriate. It did not mean anything. But deep down, I knew better. One evening, I came home from the coffee shop to find him in the kitchen making himself dinner. A frozen pizza. He had not waited for me. Hey, sweetheart, I was going to make dinner. I was hungry. I can make you something better than frozen pizza. This is fine. His voice was flat. He did not turn around. I set my purse down on the counter. The zipper clinked against the tile. Ethan, can we talk? About what? About us. About how you have been pulling away. He took the pizza out of the oven, the heat making his face flush. The smell of cheap cheese and processed dough filled the kitchen. He cut it into slices with sharp, angry movements. The knife scraped against the pan. I have not been pulling away. You have been gone. I know I have been working a lot, but it is temporary. Things will get better soon. You have been saying that for months. He finally looked at me. His jaw was tight. His eyes were hard. Every single time I ask you when things are going to change, you say soon. But nothing ever changes. You are still never here. I am here right now. For how long? His voice rose. An hour, 2 hours before you disappear again. I am not disappearing. I am working. Where? The question came out sharp and desperate. He set the knife down and turned to face me fully. Where are you working that you have to leave before I wake up and come home after I go to bed? Where are you that you cannot come to my appointments anymore? Where are you that matters more than being here? My throat tightened. I could feel my pulse in my neck. I am working at the hospital. You know that. The hospital does not need you 24 hours a day. Mom. Other nurses have normal schedules. Other nurses are home for dinner. Other nurses show up to their kids' lives. His hands were shaking. He shoved them into his pockets. So where are you really? What are you doing that is so important you cannot even be here? I am doing what I have to do. That is not an answer. His voice cracked. That is what you always say, but you never actually tell me anything. You just leave. Over and over. You just leave. I took a step toward him. Ethan, I know this is hard. Hard, he laughed. But there was no humor in it. Only pain. You think this is just hard, Mom. I feel like I am living alone. I wake up and you are gone. I come home from school and you are gone. I eat dinner by myself. I do my homework by myself. I go to bed by myself. And when you are here, you are so tired you can barely keep your eyes open. You look at me like you are trying to remember who I am. That is not true. Yes, it is. Tears were forming in his eyes now. He blinked them back furiously. You do not ask me about school anymore. You do not know what is going on in my life. You do not know that I got an A on my history project, or that I tried out for the debate team, or that I have been having nightmares again about the hospital. My chest tightened. You have been having nightmares. See, you did not even know. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Because you are never here. And when you are here, you are too exhausted to notice anything. I am sorry. I am doing the best I can, are you? The question hung in the air between us, because it does not feel like it. It feels like you are doing everything you can to avoid being around me. That is not true. Then, what is it? His voice broke completely now. What is so wrong with me that you would rather be anywhere else? What did I do that made you stop wanting to be my mom? The words were a knife to my heart. I felt my own tears rising. You did not do anything. This has nothing to do with you. Then what is it about? Why are you always gone? Why do you look so tired all the time? Why do you flinch every time the mail comes? Why do you cry in the shower when you think I cannot hear you? He was breathing hard now, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Something is wrong. I know something is wrong, but you will not tell me what it is. You just keep leaving. You just keep pretending everything is fine when it is not. I wanted to tell him, God. I wanted to tell him everything. But I could not. If I told him about the bills, about the debt, about the experimental treatment costs that were drowning us, he would blame himself. He would think his cancer had ruined everything. He would carry that guilt for the rest of his life. I cannot explain right now, I said quietly. But I need you to trust me. Trust you? He stared at me like I was a stranger. How can I trust you when you will not even be honest with me? How can I trust you when you are never here? Ethan, please, forget it. He picked up his plate. His hands were trembling so badly. The pizza slices slid to one side. I do not want to talk about this anymore. Ethan, please, let me explain. You just said you cannot explain. His voice was hollow now, defeated. So there is nothing to talk about. You do not want to be around me. I get it. Just stop pretending you care. He walked toward his room. His footsteps were heavy on the floor. Each one felt like a door closing between us. Ethan, he went into his room and closed the door. Not a slam. Just a quiet, final click. I stood in the kitchen, alone, staring at the space where he had been. The oven was still warm. The smell of pizza still hung in the air. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights briefly illuminating the window before disappearing into the dark. He thought I did not care. He thought I did not want to be around him. He thought I was avoiding him, and I could not tell him the truth. I could not explain that every moment I was gone, I was thinking about him. That every shift, every exhausting hour was for him, that I was not avoiding him. I was saving him. But he did not know that, and my silence was killing us. One night, about 10 months into my 3-job schedule, I came home from the coffee shop and found Ethan sitting at the kitchen table. It was 10:15 in the morning. He should have been at school. "Why are you home?" I asked. He did not look up. "I did not feel like going, Ethan." "You cannot just skip school because you do not feel like it." "Why not? You skip being my mom all the time." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there in the doorway, still holding my purse, still smelling like coffee and exhaustion. "That is not fair," I said quietly. "Is it not?" He finally looked at me. His eyes were red. He had been crying. "When was the last time you were actually here, Mom? And I do not mean physically in the house. I mean here, present. Paying attention to me, I am always paying attention to you. You are always working. You are always tired. You are always leaving." His voice cracked. "I had a follow-up appointment with Dr. Patel last week. Do you even remember that?" I did remember. I had taken him. I had sat in the waiting room. I had listened to Dr. Patel say that everything looked good, that he was still in remission, that we should be so proud. Of course I remember. I said, "I was there. You were there physically. But you fell asleep in the waiting room. You did not hear anything," Dr. Patel said. "I had to tell you everything in the car on the way home, and you still barely listened because you were worried about getting to your next shift on time." I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to explain, but he was right. I had fallen asleep. I had been so exhausted I could barely keep my eyes open. "I am sorry," I said. "I am doing the best I can." "Are you?" He stood up. His hands were shaking, because from where I am standing, it looks like you are doing everything you can to avoid being around me. That is not true. Then why are you never here? Why do you have so many jobs? We are not rich, but we are not starving either. Why do you need to work so much? I could not tell him. I could not explain that every extra shift, every extra dollar, was going toward keeping him alive. That the reason I was never home was because I was paying for the treatment that saved his life. The doctors had told me not to burden him with the financial details. He was a kid. He had been sick. He needed to focus on healing, not on money, so I had kept it from him. And now that secret was a wall between us. I just do, I said weakly. He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle working beneath his skin. Then he shook his head, slow and deliberate, as if he could not believe what he was hearing. His eyes glistened with tears that had not yet fallen. "You do not even care anymore. Do you, Ethan? Forget it." He turned away from me, his shoulders rigid with tension. He walked past me toward his bedroom, and I could see his hands curling into fists at his sides. The distance between us felt like it was growing with every step he took. "Ethan, wait! Please! Let me drive you." "I do not want you to drive me. I do not want anything from you. Please do not say that." His voice had changed. The anger was still there, but underneath it was something worse. Hurt, deep, bone, deep, hurt. He stopped at the doorway and turned back to look at me. His face was wet with tears now, streaks running down his cheeks. His reflection caught in the kitchen window behind him. A ghost of a boy I barely recognized anymore. His breath came in short, sharp bursts. "Do you even love me anymore?" The question shattered me. It landed like a physical blow. My breath caught in my throat. I could not speak for a moment. The breakfast dishes were still on the table between us, cold and forgotten. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, marking the seconds of my silence. "Of course I love you. Ethan, I love you more than anything in this world." "Then prove it." His voice cracked on the words. "Because right now it feels like you are just saying what you are supposed to say. Why do you act like being around me is a chore? Why do you look at me like you wish you were somewhere else?" I do not. Yes, you do. He stepped closer to me, and I could see the pain written across his face, raw and unguarded. Every time I try to talk to you, you are checking your phone or looking at the clock or thinking about your next shift. You are here, but you are not here, and I do not understand why. I do not understand what I did wrong. You did not do anything wrong. This is not about you. Then what is it about? His hands were shaking now, his whole body trembling with emotion. Because I have been trying to figure it out for months and I cannot. All I know is that my mom does not want to be around me anymore, and I do not know how to fix it. There is nothing to fix. I am just tired. I am just working too much. But it is temporary. I promise. You keep saying that. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, but the tears kept coming. But nothing changes. You just keep working more and more, and I keep being alone more and more. And I am tired of it. I am tired of feeling like I do not matter to you. You matter to me. You are everything to me. Then prove it. Quit one of your jobs. Be here. Be my mom again. People think sacrifice feels noble while you are making it. It does not. Most sacrifices do not arrive wearing courage. They arrive wearing guilt. They arrive looking like the person you love most standing in front of you, begging for something you desperately want to give them. An hour, a conversation, a quiet evening on the couch. A mother who is not always exhausted. The cruel thing about survival is that sometimes it asks you to choose between two heartbreaks, the heartbreak of staying or the heartbreak of leaving. And no matter which one you choose, somebody you love ends up hurting. I wanted to tell him that every shift I worked felt like a theft, that every movie I missed, every dinner I skipped, every moment I spent somewhere else. I felt it, I carried it, I hated it. But illness has a way of changing the rules. Suddenly love is no longer measured by how often you are present. Sometimes it is measured by what you are willing to endure when nobody sees it. Sometimes love looks less like holding someone's hand and more like breaking your own heart to keep theirs beating. I wanted to, God, I wanted to, but I could not. The bills were still coming. The debt was still there. The experimental treatment that was keeping him alive was still not covered. Every appointment, every medication, every test, every impossible number printed on every impossible bill. All of it was still waiting for me. If I quit, we would lose everything. We would lose the house. We would lose the ability to pay for his follow-up care. We would lose everything I had been fighting for. But I could not tell him that. I could not place that weight on his shoulders. Not now. Not while he was still fighting to heal. So I just stood there, silent, watching him wait for an answer I could not give. My hand reached toward him, then dropped. The coldness between us felt like a living thing. That is what I thought, he said finally. His voice was quieter now, which somehow made it worse. The anger was gone. All that remained was hurt. You cannot even promise me that, because work is more important than I am. My chest tightened. That is not true. The words came out immediately, too quickly, as if speaking them faster could somehow make them more believable. His eyes locked onto mine, searching, waiting. Then prove it. The refrigerator hummed softly behind us. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard settled. The ordinary sounds felt impossibly loud. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came, because the truth sitting inside my chest could not be spoken without breaking everything. I cannot. The last word barely made it past my lips. His shoulders sagged. Not with surprise, not with anger, with disappointment, as if some final piece of hope had quietly let go. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just pain, just the sound of a boy whose mother had chosen something else. At least you are honest, he left. He walked toward his bedroom, his shoulders hunched, his movements heavy with the weight of everything unsaid between us. The front door closed behind him a moment later, and I stood in the kitchen, alone, my hand still suspended in the air where I had tried to reach for him. The breakfast dishes stared back at me. The clock kept ticking, and I wondered how I had managed to save my son's life while losing him completely. Nobody warns you that a child can mistake sacrifice for abandonment when all they can see is your absence. There is a special kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who need you while the person you need most is slipping away. I spent my nights caring for children whose mothers sat beside their beds, holding their hands, reading them stories. I watched those mothers and I envied them. Not because their children were sick, but because they were allowed to be present, they were allowed to be there. I was saving my son by being absent, and he was interpreting my absence as abandonment. The weeks blurred together. Work, sleep, work, sleep. Brief moments with Ethan that felt more like obligations than connections. He stopped talking to me almost entirely. He ate dinner in his room. He left for school before I woke up. He went to bed before I got home from the cleaning job. We were living in the same house, but we might as well have been strangers. My sister Rachel called me one night while I was driving between the cleaning job and the hospital. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "I am fine, Margot." "You are not fine. You sound like you are about to collapse." "I am just tired." "You are always tired." "When was the last time you had a day off?" I could not remember. "I do not need a day off. I need to keep working." "Why, Ethan is in remission. The treatment worked. You did it. You saved him. Why are you still killing yourself?" "Because the bills have not stopped. Because I am still paying off the treatment. Because if I stop now, everything I have done will have been for nothing." Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What is the point of saving his life if he grows up hating you?" I did not answer. I could not. "Talk to him," Rachel said. "Tell him the truth. He is 14 years old. He can handle it. I cannot." "Why not?" "Because if I tell him, he will feel guilty. He will blame himself. He will think his cancer ruined my life." "Margot, your silence is ruining your relationship with him. That is worse. I do not know how to fix this." "Yes, you do. You tell him the truth. You let him see what you have been doing. You let him understand that every moment you were gone, you were fighting for him. You let him carry some of the weight instead of carrying it all alone. He is just a kid. He is 14. He is not a kid anymore, and he deserves to know why his mother has been absent. He deserves to know that it was not because you did not love him. It was because you loved him too much. Maybe she was right. But I did not know how to have that conversation. I did not know how to bridge the gap that had grown between us. So I just kept going, kept working, kept pretending everything was fine, until the night Ethan found the pay stub. I had been careless, exhausted. I came home from the hospital one morning and emptied my pockets on the kitchen counter. My keys, my phone, a crumpled pay stub from the cleaning company. I went to bed without putting it away. Ethan found it that afternoon. I woke up to him standing in my bedroom doorway, holding the piece of paper in his hand. The afternoon light was streaming through the window behind him, turning him into a silhouette, a dark shape, a shadow of my son for a moment. I thought I was dreaming. "What is this?" he asked. I sat up, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The blanket twisted around my legs as I moved. "What are you doing in my room? What is this?" he asked again. His voice was shaking. The pay stub trembled slightly in his fingers. Sunrise Cleaning Services. 7:30 at night to 11:30 at night, 4 nights a week. I did not say anything. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to say, how to explain. My stomach dropped, that sick, falling sensation, the one you get when you know everything is about to change. "You have been working 3 jobs. He stepped into the room. The light hit his face, and I could see everything. The confusion first. Then, the realization. Then, the hurt spreading across his features, like a stain. Tears were already gathering in his eyes, making them glisten. "This whole time, you have been working 3 jobs, Ethan. Why did you not tell me? His hands clenched into fists at his sides. His jaw tightened. I could see the muscle working beneath his skin, the physical manifestation of his anger and pain. Because I did not want you to worry. Worry about what money? He laughed, but there was no humor in it, just pain and confusion and anger. His voice cracked on the words. I have been thinking you did not want to be around me. I have been thinking you were avoiding me because you were tired of being my mom. And this whole time you have been working yourself to death. My fingers gripped the edge of the blanket. My throat tightened. I could not swallow. The air in the room felt heavy, pressing down on me. I had to. Why? And there it was. The question I had been avoiding for nearly 2 years. The question I could not answer without breaking the promise I had made to myself. The promise to protect him from the weight of what his illness had cost. But looking at him standing there, holding that pay stub, his eyes full of hurt and confusion, and something that looked like betrayal, I realized that my silence had cost him something far worse than guilt. It had cost him the knowledge that he was loved. Sit down, I said quietly. He hesitated. His body swayed slightly, as if the weight of understanding was physically pushing him off balance. Then he sat on the edge of my bed, still holding the pay stub, like it was evidence in a trial. His hands were shaking. I could see it clearly now that he was closer, now that the light caught him fully. His whole body was trembling. I took a breath. My eyes were already blurring with tears. I blinked them back, but they kept coming. When you were diagnosed, Dr. Patel told us about the experimental treatment, the one that had the best chance of saving your life. Do you remember that? He nodded. He did not look at me. He stared at the pay stub in his hands, as if it held all the answers. It was not covered by insurance. The cost was out of pocket. A lot of money. More money than I had, more money than I could ever have. His face went pale. The color drained from his cheeks. His lips pressed into a thin line. How much? It does not matter how much. What matters is that I needed to find a way to pay for it. So I took the night shift at the hospital, and when that was not enough, I took the morning shift at the coffee shop, and when that still was not enough, I took the cleaning job. Mom, every dollar I made went toward your treatment. Every shift, every sleepless night, every moment I was not here with you, I was working to keep you alive. Tears were streaming down his face now. They ran down his cheeks in silent rivers. His shoulders hunched forward. He looked smaller, suddenly, younger, like the weight of understanding was crushing him. Why did you not tell me? Because you were 14 years old and you were fighting cancer. You did not need to carry the weight of how much it cost. You needed to focus on getting better. But I thought, his voice broke completely. It shattered like glass. I thought you did not want to be around me anymore. I thought I had done something wrong. I thought you did not love me. I reached for him and pulled him into my arms. He collapsed against me, sobbing. His whole body shook with the force of it. All the pain and confusion and loneliness he had been carrying for months came pouring out. His tears soaked through my shirt. His breath came in ragged, broken gasps. I could feel his heartbeat against my chest, racing and frantic. I held him tighter. My own tears fell into his hair. My hands moved across his back, trying to hold together the pieces of him that were breaking apart. Some people do not leave your life all at once. They leave in pieces. A little presence today, a little honesty tomorrow. Until one day, all that remains is a familiar face carrying a stranger's hurt. I had done that to my son, not because I did not love him, but because I loved him so much that I could not let him see the cost of that love, and in trying to protect him, I had wounded him in ways I was only now beginning to understand. I am so sorry, I whispered. I am so sorry you thought that. I have never stopped loving you, not for one single second. Everything I did because I love you more than anything in this world. I did not know, he said between sobs. I did not know. I know. I should have told you. I should have let you see what I was doing, but I was trying to protect you. From what? From feeling guilty, from feeling like you were a burden, from feeling like your cancer ruined my life. He pulled back and looked at me. His face was wet with tears. His eyes were red and swollen. Did it? Ruin your life? No, never. You are my life. Ethan, you are the reason I get up every morning. The reason I keep going. The reason I do everything I do. Your cancer did not ruin my life. It just changed it, and I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. But you are exhausted. You are working yourself to death. How is that not ruined? Because you are alive. Because you are here. Because I get to be your mother. That is not ruined. That is everything. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You should have told me." I know. I could have helped. I could have gotten a job. I could have done something. You were sick. Your job was to get better, and you did. You are here. You are alive. That is all that matters. He shook his head. It is not all that matters. You matter too, Mom. You cannot keep sacrificing everything for me. That is not fair to you. Being your mother is not a sacrifice. It is a privilege, even when it costs you everything. I smiled through my own tears, especially then. He leaned his head on my shoulder. We sat there for a long time, neither of us speaking, just being together, just being present. Finally, he said, "I am sorry I thought you did not love me. I am sorry I made you think that. What do we do now? I do not know. But we will figure it out together." Together, he repeated. I like that. Me too. We sat there until the afternoon light faded into evening. Until the room grew dark and the only sound was our breathing. Until the weight of the secret that had been between us finally lifted. Sacrifice is a strange thing. We think of it as noble, as selfless, as proof of love. But sometimes sacrifice becomes a wall. It becomes the thing that separates us from the people we are trying to protect. We give and give and give until there is nothing left, until the people we love look at us and see a stranger. I had sacrificed my time, my health, my sleep, my presence. I had given everything I had to save my son's life. But in doing so, I had almost lost him anyway, not to cancer, to silence. The next day, I called my supervisor at the cleaning company and quit. I could not keep working 3 jobs. The money was important, but it was not more important than my relationship with my son. Rick was not happy. "You are leaving me short-staffed." "I am sorry, but I have to do this." "Whatever. Good luck finding someone else willing to work those hours." I did not care. I was done. Done with the cleaning. Done with the exhaustion, done with sacrificing my relationship with my son on the altar of survival. I kept the hospital job and the coffee shop job. It was still exhausting, still difficult, but it was manageable, and it meant I could be home in the evenings. I could have dinner with Ethan. I could be present. The bills did not go away. We were still paying off the treatment. We would be paying it off for years. But we would figure it out, together. Ethan got a part-time job at a bookstore near his school. I told him he did not have to. He told me he wanted to. "We are a team," he said. "Remember?" I remembered. We started having our Sunday pancake mornings again. He still insisted on chocolate chips. I still pretended to be scandalized, and then I still added them. The first Sunday morning after everything came out, we stood in the kitchen together. The early light was streaming through the windows, soft and golden, casting long shadows across the counter. Dust particles floated through the beams like tiny dancers. Ethan was cracking eggs into the bowl, his movements careful and deliberate. His hands were still thin from the treatment, the veins visible beneath his skin. I watched him work, noticing how he concentrated on each task as if it mattered deeply. The refrigerator hummed behind us, a steady rhythm that had become the soundtrack of our mornings. "Mom?" His voice was quiet. He did not look up from the bowl. "Yeah, thank you." I set down the measuring cup. The clink of it against the counter seemed too loud in the silence. "For what?" He cracked another egg, his jaw tightening slightly. "For everything. For saving my life. for working so hard, for loving me that much. I felt tears prick my eyes. My throat tightened. You do not have to thank me for that. Yes, I do. He finally looked at me, and I could see his eyes were glistening too, because I know now what it cost you, and I know you would do it again. But I also want you to know that I see you now. I see how hard you worked. I see how much you gave up, and I am grateful. I reached for a paper towel, my hands trembling slightly. The smell of the raw eggs and flour hung between us, ordinary and sacred all at once. I would do it all over again, I said, my voice barely steady. I know. He turned back to the bowl, stirring the eggs with more force than necessary. His shoulders rose and fell with a deep breath. But you do not have to anymore. We are going to figure this out together. Okay. I moved closer to him, close enough to see the concentration on his face, the way his lower lip pressed into his upper one as he stirred. He added the chocolate chips to the batter without asking. I did not protest. I could not have spoken if I tried. We made pancakes together, just like we used to. The griddles sizzled as I poured the first batch. The butter melted and browned, the kitchen filled with warmth, and the smell of something being created, instead of something being lost. For the first time in months, it felt like we were a team again. We started talking again. Really talking, not just surface conversations, but the deep ones. The ones that mattered. He told me about the girl he liked, who apparently did like him back now. Her name was Sophie, and they had been texting for weeks, and he was thinking about asking her to the school dance. You should ask her, I said. What if she says no? Then she says no, but at least you will know. And I think she will say yes. How do you know? Because you are smart and kind and funny, and any girl would be lucky to go to a dance with you. He smiled. You have to say that. You are my mom. I am saying it because it is true. He told me about his fears that the cancer would come back, that the remission would not last, that he would have to go through it all again. Dr. Patel says the chances of recurrence are very low, I reminded him. I know, but I am still scared. That is normal. That is okay. You went through something traumatic. It is going to take time to feel safe again. Do you ever feel scared that it will come back? Every day, I admitted. Every single day. But I also have hope, and I have you, and that is enough. He told me about the guilt he felt knowing how much I had sacrificed for him. I hate that you had to work so hard because of me, he said one night. We were sitting on the couch watching a movie. I hate that my cancer cost you so much. It did not cost me anything. It gave me something. It gave me the chance to fight for you, to show you how much I love you, to prove that there is nothing I would not do to keep you safe. But you were exhausted. You were miserable. I was tired. But I was not miserable, because every shift, every exhausting hour, I knew I was doing it for you. And that made it worth it. I do not know if I could do what you did. You could. If you had to. If someone you loved needed you, you would find a way. That is what love does. It makes us capable of things we never thought possible. I told him the truth, that I would do it all over again. That he was worth every sleepless night, every exhausting shift, every moment of pain. But I also told him that I had learned something. That love is not just about sacrifice. It is also about presence, about being there, about letting the people you love see you, even when you are struggling. I had tried to protect him by hiding my struggle, but in doing so, I had made him feel unloved. I had made him feel like he was not worth my time. That was the real cost of my silence. Not the money, not the exhaustion, but the distance it created between us. Hope is stubborn. It will live in broken houses longer than wisdom ever would. One evening, about 6 months after he found the pay stub, Ethan and I were sitting on the couch watching a movie. It was a comedy, something light and easy. The blue glow from the television cast shadows across his face, softening the angles that had become sharper during his treatment. We were eating popcorn, and the bowl sat between us on the cushion, a small barrier that suddenly felt insignificant. He had been quieter than usual all evening. I noticed the way his fingers moved through the popcorn without really tasting it, the way his eyes kept drifting away from the screen, toward the window, toward nothing in particular. During a quiet moment in the film, he turned to me. His jaw tightened first. I watched him take a breath, the kind of breath you take before you say something that matters. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the popcorn bowl, then stopped. He did not reach for it at all. "Thank you," he said. He set the bowl aside instead, pushed it gently onto the coffee table. The movement was deliberate, careful, as if he needed both hands free for what came next. His voice was steady, calmer than I expected. There was no tremor in it, no hesitation, just quiet certainty. "For what?" He looked down at his hands first, studied them for a moment. Then he looked back at me, and his expression was different than it had been in months open clear, like something heavy had finally been set down for everything. For the jobs, for the nights you did not sleep, for choosing to keep me alive even when it meant losing yourself for a while. My chest tightened, not with tears this time, but with something deeper, something that felt like relief and grief mixed together. I pressed my lips together and nodded slowly, not trusting my voice yet. "You do not have to thank me for that," I said when I could speak. My voice came out rougher than I intended. "I do, though." He shifted on the couch, turning more fully toward me. His shoulders were relaxed now, not hunched with anger or pain, like they had been for so long. "Because I understand now. I understand what you carried. I understand why you could not tell me. And I understand that every hour you were gone, you were actually fighting to stay." He paused, swallowed. His Adam's apple moved visibly in his throat. "I see what you sacrificed. I see the person you became so I could have a future. And I am grateful, not just because I am alive, but because I have a mother who would do that, who did do that." My hand moved to his face without my permission. My fingers trembled as they touched his cheek, feeling the warmth of his skin, the softness of his youth. A tear spilled over and traced down my own face. I did not wipe it away. "You are my whole world, Ethan. You always have been." "I know," he said. "I know that now." I pulled him close, and he let me. His head rested against my chest, and I could feel the weight of him, solid and real and alive. I kissed the top of his head, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo, feeling the texture of his hair beneath my lips. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. Or maybe it was just loud because he was close enough to hear it. The movie continued softly in the background. The actors laughed at something. The laugh track played, but none of it mattered. The world had narrowed to this moment, to the warmth of my son against me, to the feeling of his arm around my waist, to the knowledge that we had made it through. We sat there in the glow of the television, and for the first time in nearly 2 years, I felt like we were okay. Not perfect. Not without scars. But, okay, healing is not a straight line. It is messy and complicated, and sometimes it feels like you are taking 2 steps back for every step forward. But it is possible, even when the damage feels irreparable. Even when the silence has lasted too long. Even when you think you have lost someone forever. It is possible to find your way back. Ethan is 18 now. He is in college, studying biology. He wants to be a doctor. He says he wants to help kids like him. Kids who are fighting for their lives. Kids whose mothers are fighting just as hard. He calls me every Sunday. We talk about his classes, his friends, his life. We talk about everything and nothing. And every time we talk, I am grateful. Grateful that he is alive. Grateful that he is healthy. Grateful that we found our way back to each other. The medical bills are almost paid off. Another year, maybe 2, and we will be free of them. It has taken nearly 4 years. 4 years of working 2 jobs. 4 years of sacrifice. But we made it. And more importantly, we made it together. I learned something through all of this. I learned that love is not just about what you are willing to give up. It is also about what you are willing to share. Your struggles, your fears, your humanity. I thought I was protecting Ethan by hiding the cost of his treatment, but what I was really doing was robbing him of the chance to understand how deeply he was loved. I was robbing him of the chance to carry the weight with me instead of watching me carry it alone. Silence is a thief. It steals connection. It steals understanding. It steals the very thing we are trying to protect. I will never regret working 3 jobs to save my son's life. I will never regret the sleepless nights, or the exhaustion, or the sacrifice. But I do regret the silence. I regret the wall I built between us in the name of protection, because in the end, what he needed was not just a mother who would save his life. He needed a mother who would let him see her, all of her, the strong parts and the broken parts, the sacrifices and the struggles. He needed to know that he was worth it, not just worth the money or the work, but worth the truth. And now he knows. If this story stayed with you, leave a word in the comments that captures what you are feeling right now. And if you want to hear another story about the complicated truths we keep from the people we love most, stay with me. Because sometimes the secrets we keep to protect our families are the very things that tear them apart.
Thank you for spending this time with Cora Stories Live. Wherever you listened from tonight, whether near or far, in the morning light, in the quiet afternoon, or deep into the stillness of night, I'm grateful you were here. Your support means more than words can say. Until the next story, rest well, stay strong, and keep believing in second chances. Good night.